But
Okay, if you have a way to make it work, I'm good for it.
yeah, and if not, we can. That's what the next recording is for. It's a continuous improvement process, like how Honda
Oh my
does it.
god, we're we're in the early stages. We're in the episodes that will make us cringe later at some
Oh,
point.
every episode is like
Whether
that.
the cringe will get whether or not the cringe will get any better is yet to be determined.
Yes. But yeah, so the only way to begin is by beginning then. And
I
hello,
suppose so.
gentle listeners. You are listening to the first episode of Somehow You Didn't Die on Your Way to Work, a transit industry safety podcast. I am one of the hosts, the disembodied voice coming to you from the void, and also the bottom left corner of the screen. I'm Joe Zeta.
And I am the co-host who knows way too much but somehow doesn't know enough because I can't seem to handle any other job besides actually running the damn trains. I'm Zach Librand.
All right, so let's go on to our first slide, which I believe is just going to be saying who we are.
Nope,
No,
it's
it's
content.
content. I made
Fucking
this.
got him.
I made this slideshow too. So the contents for this, we start with the introduction, which is where we are, and then we continue on to the news. Then we get the today's theme. We get today's theme, which is talking about what this episode will be about. As a note for the listeners out there, slide, these episodes will be centered around some sort of incredibly vast or deeply specific themes, such as light rail disasters or fire, to give you opposite ends of the spectrum.
Foreshadow.
Mm-hmm. Uh, then we'll have two segments, one presented by me, one presented by Zach. I will be doing the history segment, and Zach will be doing "But Did You Die?" And the history segment basically shows how people used to die in ye olden bad days, and then Zach says how we don't do that anymore because of societal progression.
Well,
Mostly don't die.
well,
The dying is less certain
the numbers have
nowadays.
gone down. The
Yes,
numbers have gone down.
the num
We'll give humanity that.
the numbers have decreased significantly, which is a marked improvement, especially in today's disaster, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, we have to do the introduction. Who are we and why do you care? As I said mere moments ago, I am Joe Zeta. I am, I guess, technically someone who professionally knows about trains. I don't do it for my job, but I've been a freelance writer with Trains.com and with Railfan and Railroad Magazine now for a couple of years. And other than that, I am just generally knowledgeable about trains through many of the same ways that all of you listening are. And then Zach is
Well,
professionally into trains.
I am the professional train toucher. I have worked for a number of different railroads full time over the years. I've been qualified as an operator on light rail on vintage streetcars. I'm currently a conductor for a freight railroad, and I am somehow old enough that I remember and have been qualified as a fireman on the steam locomotives.
Mad jealous.
Which I will leave you to figure out how that's possible. But I ran them in regular service.
Really fucking jealous. I know how you did it. Still very jealous. But yeah, so now we go on to our next slide, which is the news.
Oh god, Depression Central, here we come.
Yep, I tried to make it funny, but only as funny as it can be. First item. Yes, after a very short selection process,
Shorter
Rob,
than I thought it would be.
Robert Prevost of Chicago was selected as the next head of the Ferrovia Vaticana following the death of his predecessor Francis. He is the
And that's the only thing of note he'll ever do.
that is the
That's all that matters.
yes, the South Side's very own Robert Prevost, as put up by the White Sox billboard crew a couple of days after his assignation to the post. After his ascension to the post, the Vatican Railway is notable as the world's shortest national railway network, featuring about 300 meters of track, and operates no rolling stock other than a tractor that was donated to the company in 2011 by New Holland, which is a
Now,
subsidiary of a bigger industrial concern in Italy.
I actually did not know that. I thought they had at least like a a car or two for him to ride
They
in, but
they
they don't own anything
the
but the
papal
tractor.
the papal train is, I believe, in a museum because it might have
Get that
been
bitch back out
Pope
of there.
it might have been Pope Pius the 13th, or the one who
Oh, I
immediately.
don't know my popes.
Neither
Which
do
one was
I.
that?
One of the ones from pre World War II rode on it at least once. It has not been used frequently and has been in a museum for longer than it was ever in service. Currently, currently the Italian State Railway Company operates all services on the Vatican State Railway, and also provides all rolling stock. The tractor is only used as, it's not even a high rail tractor. I think they just bounce it over the ties to shunt the
Hell
two or
yeah.
three freight cars a month they interchange. Uh, so it's
What is
actually
the Pope getting delivered in bulk enough to justify filling a car?
from the
Because
few
if they're delivering entire rail cars, that means it's not less than carload, which means that is filled with stuff exclusively for the Vatican.
from the few pictures on Wikipedia that I saw, it does appear that they were loading garbage outbound
Oh,
because
oh!
it's
They're too good to have
it.
like their own dump at the Vatican. Everybody poops, dude. Come on.
I don't think they have enough space. There's probably something in the Lateran Treaty about it, but
You could
they were
you
they
could
were
use a couple of bedrooms for that. I'm sure
they
there's
were
spares.
they were actually loading them into boxcars because the Europeans mostly use side door vans, dry vans still for this. So I think they're just wheeling dumpsters in there and then taking it off to be delivered to wherever the Italians dispose of their waste.
I
Um,
did find a picture of the tractor and it's so cute. It wants to be a train so bad.
yeah,
It's not even on the platform, it's just off the end of the
hmm
platform in between two tracks.
yeah. And do you want to know what's really funny? There is a tunnel that doesn't go anywhere. I know which picture you're talking
Wait,
about.
where's the map? Where is the map? I saw the map. I
The
saw the
tunnel is
map.
a head
Where did it go?
shunt.
Hell yeah.
The tunnel, it dead
Bury the
ends.
head shunt under. Oh, look at that, dude. You can't even go straight into the station. You can't run around a train in there.
It's
Oh,
the
that's
ultimate.
classy.
It's the ultimate desktop switching layout. Is you
That's what it looks like, really.
it Yeah, it was it's the Pope has ridden by train several times. I think most recently Pope Francis did a couple of years ago, but it was um it was done on an Italian steam train that was brought in special for the occasion.
Okay, mad respect to Pope Francis for that one.
Yeah.
You know, not just riding a train, but getting a steam locomotive.
Yeah.
That's fucking rad.
Yeah, the Italian and the Vatican State Railways, I think, have one train a week, which is better than Amtrak in some states. But
Yes, yes. Oh god, yes it is.
they have a single train on Saturdays that I think is part of a tourist thing that takes it to the summer palace that the Pope has in. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like Montgallo or something. Oh God, I should
The
have.
the Pope has a summer house?
It used to be. Well, okay. I've been doing a lot of reading into the Vatican because it's interesting. Um, Italy used to
Far
be
more than I have, apparently.
Italy used to be the Papal States. So this was all papal land, and then as Italian unification came on, they basically had to retreat into just the walled city of the Vatican, and then there was a a treaty written in like the 1850s that sort of codified the current arrangement of the Vatican is its own country, and then they have their own they have like some buildings outside of the Vatican, like in Rome or Castel Gandolfo. That's what it is. It's the big castle. It's a big castle on the outskirts of Rome that is technically territory of the Vatican, but isn't really. It's sort of like almost like how a lot of places treat embassies. And
Dude, this shit makes my head hurt.
they run a train down there for tourism to connect between the Vatican and the Castel Gandolfo.
What the fuck?
Look, it's a major news story, and I read about it because it's fascinating. Also, the Vatican website for the state railway is Web 1.0 still. It's hilariously like
No way, no,
it,
no,
I
no
don't
way,
think
no
they've
way. Hang on,
updated.
I'm looking, I'm
If you can
looking.
find it through, I think the Wikipedia site, or if not the Wikipedia site in English, then the one in Italian. But it is. I don't think they've updated it since like 2003.
Vatican.v. Oh, oh, look at that repeating background. Oh, lordy. Dude, this is
You're gonna have
1.0 enough that the translator doesn't even want to kick in automatically. Oh, Steam Dragon.
what is it again? Because I have to now show it for the audience because otherwise they're never gonna know. It's Vatican.
Uh, Vatican.va.
Nope, that is the wrong. That is a different section of the website because. But yeah, this is the Vatican.
Well, here.
That is the Vatican.
Well, here's the page specifically for the railway. There you go.
Yes, now they can see my other screen. Haha.
Would you like to tell them what your dual screen setup is?
No,
Because I didn't hit record till after.
no,
after
no.
that.
We're not. My dual screen system. No, my dual.
We're not going to
screen
let them look behind the curtain. Okay.
No, but yeah, look at all of this. Look at how ancient this website is. I do like that the railway actually has a door that like slides behind a wall. You really could make this a desk layout and have a little a little knot hole in the wall that the train comes into and out of. I also all the way down at the bottom. I really like the really, really terrible John Paul II superimposed over top of a terrible rainbow image.
That one's bad.
Like,
Okay, I'll fully admit
oh, it's
not
so
religious
tiny.
whatsoever. I had to look at that and I was trying to figure out what the fuck it was, and I vaguely remembered something about Pope John Paul in 2000. Pope John Paul II
Yes,
in 2002.
20.
Oh,
It's terrible.
right below that.
Yeah,
Right below that are pictures of
him
some
on
pope.
the.
I can't tell which
that would-
one on the train.
So judging by
I
the fact that
opened the. Go on, go on.
judging by the fact that this is all talking about John Paul II, they didn't update it since before Benedict took power.
Oh fuck, dude! I tried to open those images in a new tab, thinking maybe they were thumbnails. No, the images they have on the site are 150 by 100 pixels.
Yes, yes,
Oh, return.
it's like
Return with the V. This is how every website should be.
It's like the Berkshire Hathaway website. It's so terrible. Berkshire Hathaway hasn't updated their website in 30 years. It's great. This is the parent company of BNSF.
Yes.
And
I've
Geico.
seen it. It's been a while. I cannot remember specifics, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight because we're not here to detect
There's no pixels
Web
for
1.0
specific-
websites because I have examples, and we're not getting
Oh,
into
yeah.
it tonight.
In fact, we'll continue to not get into it by going to the next tab.
Let's do that.
Yes. News item 2. Things are bad now. So the short version of this is that due to current politics and Elon Musk, Um, Amtrak is cutting at least 450 positions and at least $100 million
Mm-hmm.
in annual cuts. I'm not entirely certain how they plan on doing this yet. But also notably, Stephen Gardner, former CEO of Amtrak, and also electronic musician, uh, with a train-themed album out on several train-themed albums out under his name, stepped down.
Yes, it does.
Stepped
Oh my
down
God,
from
they're
Amtrak in March, and and mainly because I believe Donald Trump told him make these cuts, and he said no and pieced out, which
I
respectable.
would I would see that. Yeah, I given his track record, I could see him like consciously objecting to this.
Yeah, I imagine this was the I would rather just quit than be your errand boy for killing the railroad that I have spent 16 years of my life on. So,
Yeah.
because like really
So
and truly, I cannot state enough how much Stephen Gardner likes trains. His EDM band was called Chessie. He his entire albums were train themed titles. I listened to them. They aren't even bad. They're
you know what? This is legitimately the first I'm hearing about this. Let's pop open the old Spotify and check it out.
it. I hope it was Stephen Gardner who was this, but it definitely was Chessie.
Nope, not Steppenwolf.
Yep, it
Nope.
was. It was. He started in 1994. His first full length was Signal Series and was Amazon.com's best dance and DJ album of 1998.
Well, apparently he's not on Spotify.
He is on Spotify. Chessie is
If I
on
just
Spotify.
search. Oh
Chessie's,
wait. Yeah, I searched for his name. Hang
yeah.
on.
And his albums are called Signal Series Meet
Oh, the
Over.
dude's wearing a Chessie shirt in his
Yeah.
profile pictures. Oh my God.
And the
Daylight, Inner City, Clear Block, K Tower. Yeah, dude, we get it.
uh-huh. He's
Oh
he
boy.
he he really likes this stuff. Oh, and his oh no, I can't look at his website anymore because it's like a Flash supported one
Oh no! Why did we get rid of Flash?
because Steve Jobs hated it. That's the only reason
Fuck
why.
Steve Jobs.
Oh
Fuck
yeah.
Steve Jobs. But anyway,
But
the
any
the this job cut, I actually saw the news about it, and I texted a friend of mine who worked in a position for Amtrak that was at risk for being cut. And I shot him a message and I said, "Hey man, are you okay? I've heard about this coming up." And he goes, "I don't know. We'll find out about it on the 15th." So I sat there with bated breath, and on the evening of the 15th, I hadn't heard anything. So I shot him a message and I was like, "Bud, you doing okay over there? Or is your job safe?" And he goes, "They can't fucking lay me off if I quit." I was like,
oh
"Oh boy, what?" He was there for a while too, and I was like, I asked him what was going on, and he laid out. There's been a massive culture change within just the last month and a half to 2 months,
I can't
ever since they've
imagine
been on the
why.
chopping block, and he
Yeah.
didn't want anything to do with it.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine how bad that must be to be an Amtrak employee. And you could, as someone who lives on the northern Ohio portion of the Floridian route, where that train has been up to 10 hours late multiple times, I can't imagine being a passenger on on Amtrak either. Which, fun fact, Zach and I know each other through the Well, There's Your Problem podcast Discord. I went to the live show that they just recently did in Philadelphia. Amtrak's options for getting me to Philadelphia from the Sandusky, Ohio Amtrak station, which is near but not where I live, don't dox me. Uh, the options were spend about 100 and some odd dollars in coach for 17 hours, which would include at least one layover, possibly at 4 o'clock in the morning in Pittsburgh. Or I could spend $800 each way for a room on the Floridian. So I can't imagine being an Amtrak passenger right now. I can't imagine how bad it is for the people who do have to take Amtrak. And do you want to
I
know who it could be worse, though? It could be worse for our friends in aviation right now. I
oh
so yes,
oh you already hit the button. Oh fuck! I was gonna
that
tell.
was a segue. That was a transition. And
Mm.
anyway, so for full disclosure, we started making this slideshow back in January, and so this
Don't
is
fucking judge us. Our
a
schedules are hectic.
yes, and this is a collection of all of the news items that happened over the course of making the first few slide decks so that we could record them all at once. On the left, you will see the collision of American Airlines flight. What the hell was the flight number?
I don't even remember now.
Yeah,
There's been so much news since then that
yeah.
I have forgot about this.
American Airlines flight 5342 collided with a UH-60 Blackhawk over the airspace of Reagan National Airport in D.C. This is, and I mean this legitimately, the worst airplane crash in the U.S. In the 2000 since 2001. Not 9/11, mind you. The November 2001 crash of American Airlines Flight 287. I want to say the one that the A300 that fell
Wait,
apart.
what was that?
An Airbus
Oh,
A300 crashed over Queens because the co-pilot was too heavy with the rudder pedals, and they
587. Yep.
587. I'm good with numbers, and ripped the tail.
5 is just a 2 backwards. You're
Yeah,
fine.
and ripped the tailplane off. So, but this is the worst one since then. It is the first airplane crash to happen in the United States on a passenger airliner outside of Alaska since 2009 when the Colgan Air disaster happened in Buffalo. And this is just an absolute tragedy for all parties involved, most notably the figure skating community, who suffered a huge tragedy because this flight was coming from Wichita to Washington, and the
They didn't get Tanya Harding, did they?
no, they didn't. Actually, this was the
Okay,
junior. This
good,
was
because
the,
she's on my goon squad.
this was. Oh, you're gonna. Okay. This was the. I
No,
am.
oh, not that
I
goon.
am.
Oh no.
I am talk. I okay. I need to. You really picked a bad time to interrupt that because this is a bunch of kids died in this. Unfortunately, this was the junior figure skating.
Oh,
This was the American Junior Figure Skating Championship in Wichita, and because of the
oh,
degradation
good.
of the American airline industry from a passenger perspective, Wichita had like 3 direct flights. This was the only one to the East Coast. This is actually the second time that the figure skating community has had this happen. The previous time was in the 60s when a Sabina flight going to Belgium crashed and killed most of the Olympic level figure skating team, which had been going to a competition in Europe. So
Well, it's 70 something years between incidents, which is just enough time for a community to
that actually
forget
was
lessons. Like we
that
shouldn't put that much
that,
faith in
that actually was
in
mentioned
modes
as
of
like
transportation.
they legitimately had just finished the wounds from that crash had more or less faded within the last decade or so.
Oh,
So
everybody who was old enough forgot.
basically, and so
Oh,
this
forgot
is
or died.
forgot it. Yeah, and this and aviation has gotten so much safer that it really doesn't make as much sense until now. We're still waiting on the results, but what it appears to be from a preliminary standpoint is that the American Airlines jet, operated by regional carrier PSA Airlines, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of American Airlines, and I could talk about that all day. Um, they were doing nothing wrong. The Army Black Hawk helicopter was on a night vision training flight, and they accidentally were outside of their assigned altitude corridor by
Hmm.
about a couple of 100 feet, which really shouldn't be a margin of error that causes 67 people to die. But Dulles
This
Airport.
is one of those things that always terrifies me. Like, you could be on a flight with the most qualified crew that does everything by the book, where they should be, when they should be, and somebody else just fucks up, and
Hmm.
you're dead.
And
Like,
especially,
I deal with this shit at work every day. It kind of pisses me off, and it's why I have to take anti-anxiety medications.
yeah, it is. It is very tragic, especially DCA. Del, DC Airport is what the code stands for. Um, Basically, they had a helicopter flight path going directly down the side of the Potomac River, within 200 feet vertically of the approach path for the runways. And
That seems like a not
it's
large enough margin of
it's
error.
not. They have been having issues literally since records began of of near misses between helicopters and aircraft.
We
and
don't learn. We never learn.
and to make matters worse, the controller there's been a countrywide shortage of air traffic controllers for years now. I genuinely would have thought, I've been saying for a couple of years that the most likely cause of the big one is going to be an air traffic controller shortage, causing something similar to the Uberlingen air disaster that happened over Germany in like 2004. This was not on my bingo card, but apparently this is a very Washington National specific issue, and the air traffic controller happened to be out at night. So there was one guy operating the helicopter channel and the approach channel, and just the helicopter. They're not sure whether it had a faulty altimeter, whether the altimeter wasn't calibrated right, or if just wearing night vision goggles really screws with your depth perception and they weren't looking at the instruments. Because this was a night vision training flight for the pilot. So whatever happened, they were in the wrong place at exactly the wrong
Is
moment. This
is
was the when of the if not if but when situation. Um, I don't think that this specific thing is going to happen again, but I think that it will somewhere else pretty soon unless something else is done, because a lot of people said when this happened that obviously Trump had had something to do with it.
nah,
I'm not inclined to believe so, because this was less than a week
no,
after his inauguration. I do think
no.
that the massive cuts being made to the federal government at all levels will have an impact on the next one in some way.
I If it's been an established issue that there have been several near misses already, then yeah, you're right. This was an issue of not if but when. And now that we have had this issue, we're going to do the good reactive society thing and say, all right, in this zone we need more separation. But I'm sure there are dozens, if not
Oh,
hundreds, of other similar zones that they'll just go, well, that won't happen
oh
here,
yeah,
and we'll get another similar collision
oh yeah.
somewhere else.
So, like, to give you an example of this, they shut down the helicopter corridor going by Reagan National after this, but Newark International Airport up in New Jersey, very recently, New York TRACON, the air traffic control for the New York area, was split up. Uh, and Newark's air traffic control was moved to Philadelphia. They have apparently been suffering numerous technological outages that have caused delays up to 300 minutes, if not more, for incoming flights. Most recently, there have been a spate of reports, both from Newark and elsewhere, that the telecommunications system allowing controllers to see where the airplanes are and talk to the airplanes and do everything basically have just been dropping out for 90 seconds or more.
Blackout, baby.
And actually, like, one of the more recent ones was so bad that 4 different controllers had to take trauma leave because they were like, we have no idea if these people are going to die or not in this 90
Yeah,
second
yeah.
window.
Just imagine being left in that suspense. Everything's going honky dory. You're just fine. It's a normal night at work, and then all of a sudden, the man in charge has zero control.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I could fucking take trauma. I could see why they take trauma
yeah,
leave. I would take it.
and it doesn't help that air traffic control is one of the highest stress industries you can get into. It doesn't pay that well. There's a very stringent training thing, and mental health. If you have bad mental health, you're encouraged within the community
You're done.
to lie about it, because the alternative
Oh
is
yeah,
you get fired. That also happens with piloting.
yeah.
So, which is why that one guy on Alaska Airlines a couple of years ago just thought he was having a really bad mushroom trip and just turned the airplane off. So, because he was just, you can't see a therapist ever. How never pay?
Because we've set up the stigma for against mental health, and now this is the end result of
Yeah,
it.
we're gonna have to do an episode on all the shit that's happening in aviation at some point, because I could talk about it for 2 hours. But basically, a lot of things have been happening over the last 20 years, and the bill is starting to come due on some of them. Now, those of you who have been watching the screen very intently might notice the GIF on the right side of the screen. That is not a bill that is coming due. That is, I have no idea what the fuck happened there. Um, on the right side of the screen, this is the crash of MedJet's flight 055 in Philadelphia, which is more notable because there was a copious amounts of video footage of essentially a high intensity cruise missile impact on an urban area of Philadelphia. We don't know what happened yet, but the gist of it was that a Mexican registered Learjet operating as a medical evacuation flight took off from Philadelphia Executive Airport, immediately suffered some form of in-flight upset, and then nosedived into the ground at full power and killed all 6 people in the airplane, including a young child who had just finished cancer treatment. I think it was cancer treatments, and one individual in a car on the ground. Left a 6-foot deep crater outside of the Roosevelt Mall in Philadelphia, and generally caused massive chaos and quite a few Twitter and Blue Sky and whatever other social media sites you prefer videos of body parts lying on the street. That
Oh Jesus,
Yeah,
dude!
that was fun seeing that. I actually usually don't seen get shown gore on my social media feeds, but I did on that time. But
I
because
yeah. So foreshadowing to a future episode, there's one coming up that we did some research for. Uh, that included a newspaper. Some of the research included a newspaper article from a country that apparently did not give a fuck because we both sort of simultaneously found at the same time that the newspaper just printed a photo of a pile of bodies that
on the front page,
it was on the fucking front page, and
and
I
I think
don't
there
get why that's okay.
and I think there was news video too, uh, that they also just didn't censor, because why would they? But yeah. So MedJet's 055, I don't think we're going to see a lot of change come from that one. I'm, old Learjets love to just die like this because,
Do they? Because that thing looks
well,
like, I mean, not to make light of it, but it looks like it just had a vendetta against Philadelphia
no. What
and
happens is that old
launched
Lear,
itself.
old Learjets are like old Mercedeses. By the time they get to be 40 years old, nobody who owns them is really providing them with the level of mechanical care they need. So things go
God's
wrong.
sake, that
But
costs money.
But the problem is that when you have an old Mercedes, the worst thing that can happen is the suspension fails and the car is now like you've gotten a free slamming kit out of it. And the problem is with an old Learjet, you've got a free slam into the ground. This happens just because like airplanes are incredibly expensive. You need like Delta Tech Ops level line maintenance to keep an airplane in the air reliably, which is why actually the last like major non-cargo airline accident to feature an in-flight structural failure was American 587, and even then that was crew induced. Airplanes generally don't fall apart out of the sky unless they're made by Boeing post 2020. So this is so
I
older
I
business
do have
jets do that
I do
sometimes.
have bad news for you. You've just been calling it by the wrong flight number for like
Is
10
it
minutes
is it
now.
051?
It's 056. The model is a Learjet 55.
Oh my god. I love that I got those numbers mixed up. I'm sorry everybody. Medjets 056. But yes, so that is something that has happened.
Oh, this detail right here. I'm looking at something that says the NTSB announced in the preliminary report that the cockpit voice recorder had not recorded the flight and had likely been inoperative for several years.
Yeah, that's seriously old Mercedes problems. You wanna look fly, but shit
What the
breaks,
fuck?
and it doesn't matter. Also, a lot of
Gotta
small,
make the money.
also a lot of smaller. The regulations around smaller passenger planes like this are much looser than ones for major commercial aircraft. And the airplane was registered in Mexico, which I don't. That's not like a knock against Mexico. I don't know what their civil aviation regs are. It could be that this is allowed to just not be on. Like you can just that's on the minimum equipment list.
Hopefully,
So
hopefully that's just like an optional thing down there, so it's technically not illegal. But I have a feeling that it's
I have yeah, they
not
probably
a not a legal thing, and it was just kind of looked over because it cost money to fix.
yeah, that's generally how
That
this
seems to be
works.
the running issue in North America.
That is actually just in Western civilization in general. Is it costs money and that sounds
Yeah,
bad.
fair.
So and then onwards to more disasters and death. Here we go.
What next?
So this one we've got there. This one we've got some fun ones. So up at the top we've got Bering Air Flight 445, which crashed near Nome, Alaska. As I mentioned, you do have to asterisk most. This was the last air crash in America for however many years, because planes in Alaska just crash all the time because Alaska is a very remote society. They are flying a lot more than everybody
Alaska is
else.
still the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
I have been there. I have seen it. I don't know how some of y'all survive up there, but I am mildly jealous and mostly impressed.
they're flying like it's the 1950s up there, complete with the requisite body counts. Bering Air 445 was, I believe, 11 people were on board. It was a Cessna Caravan, and it just fell out of the sky. Again, very interested to see why it did that. Not especially surprised that it happened. Tragedy all around, but not exactly something that the average traveling public should be concerned about. But it did mean that the three fatal air accidents in 2025 before like March all happened in the U.S. And then up comes Delta
We're
Connection.
making America great again, though,
We are
right?
make we are making America great again. And up next, we spread
That's the
that to the
important part.
Canadians with Delta Connection Flight 4819, operated by Endeavour Air, another subsidiary of another regional carrier, was a CRJ 900 landing at Toronto Pearson. And the original joke that I had for this was that they forgot to flip the switch from not woke to woke when they landed in Canada, and so the airplane and the ground had a bit of an interaction with that, and the airplane flipped over. But as it turns out, from what I have heard through people that I know in the industry, um, what it seems most likely, and again I could be wrong, is that the crew of the airplane, started were a co-pilot who was still learning, or it might have just been a pilot who was like getting examined for their line check for the first time, and a captain who was a simulator jockey. So he had been mostly flying in
Oh,
sims, and so they basically put it down on the
oh.
runway at like something like 2,000 feet per minute or something like that.
Okay,
Like,
okay. All of you foamers who legitimately put I have this many simulator hours in Train Sim World 2020, whatever the fuck they're on now, on your application to BNSF Railway, this is what you get. This is what happens. Just this guy just put FSX or Flight Simulator Steam Edition.
I think nowadays it's X-Plane is what everybody uses too, but
I don't. Oh my god,
FS24s.
simulators are so hard to keep up
Oh
with.
yeah, but basically they put it down at far beyond the normal speed. The landing gear was basically, I'm not sure if it sheared off or it was fired through the wing root, but in either event, the In either event, um,
That's a phrase right there.
it
Fired through the wing root. Oh
in
fuck.
either event, the airplane structured a massive structural failure at literally the strongest point of the airframe, the wing root, and then proceeded to
Oh.
roll over onto its back and slide down the tarmac. Fortunately, everybody inside lived, and any injuries were treated by the free Canadian healthcare system that is gay and communist. But the airplane definitely is now upside down and will never fly again, which is good because Bombardier CRJ 900s and all Bombardier CRJ jets are the devil, and I don't care what
Yes, they
anybody
are.
says otherwise. I am 6'3" and I can't stand up inside of them. If you ever
I'm
wa-
5'10" and I cannot sit
if you
comfortably
ever
in
want
those. I uh,
if you ever want to experience hell on earth, try going to the bathroom in a CRJ when you are my size. It just doesn't. You just have to sort of pee in the general direction of the toilet and hope that it figures itself out. But
I pee now. Good luck, everybody.
good good luck. Good luck. Figure out what happens next. I'm certain I can barely shut the door. It's just oh god. But
I the last time I flew on a CRJ 900, I was coming back from some work-related training, and I was supposed to go from Atlanta to DFW, and we tried to circle around a storm at DFW for like 40, 45 minutes, and the pilot didn't feel the need to warn us that he was going to try to do this. So I saw how close we were, what time it was, and I was like, probably ought to use the bathroom before we land. We might be a little bit. DFW's busy. And when I was in the bathroom, he skirted just a little too close, and that bathroom is small enough that I hit my head on the ceiling of the bathroom because of the turbulence. And
oh
after 40 minutes of trying to circle around just to fuck off a massive Texas storm, he went, "Nah, we're not doing this," and finally bailed on DFW, and we got forced to El Paso.
oh my god. Yeah, my I
I'm
actually
sorry, not El Paso. That was silly. We got forced to Austin.
that's still very far away. But
It was a miracle I made it home that night, and I had some strings pulled to get me there.
Jesus. But yeah, actually, I remarked when I first saw this that if the plane had rolled over with me in it, I wouldn't have noticed because I would have just been I almost touched
Well,
the
your
ceiling.
head would have just wedged you in place,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
yeah. No, it absolutely would have. I hate regional jets so much, and every one of them that is fewer on this earth is a good thing. But but yeah, and then finally rounding this out, we have the most least serious disaster in this list, which is a weird way of
If
saying
anything, it's the most clear cut who's at fault here.
yes, it is, but it's also really bad just in general. This could have been
It could have gone so bad.
so bad. So this is Southwest Airlines flight 2504 and FlexJet flight 560. This is at Chicago Midway Airport. So and this was actually caught on video by I guess a plane spotter, and it's really obvious what happened. Listening to the air traffic control audio on YouTube, the FlexJet crew was, I would say, almost dangerously incompetent. They were struggling to understand the controller's readback instructions. They did not seem to know entirely where they were going, and they just eventually bumbled their way across the active runway while a Southwest Airlines flight was landing in front of them. And so we very nearly got like a major disaster that would have absolutely killed several hundred people.
I
And
I will say that this incident happened without doxing myself too much. This incident happened right before I lost my very vested interest in Southwest Airlines, so I got a little bit of insider knowledge. And in the very brief period, I'd say like within a couple of hours of this happening, there was word going around that it had happened, and there was some misinformation from I'm not sure exactly who, but from some people that was suggesting that the crew of Southwest 2504 maybe shouldn't have tried to land right then, and it was then followed by a huge collective sigh of relief, and it was like, oh, thank God, it was just FlexJet being FlexJet.
Yeah, yeah, and this is actually going back to my thing about the MedJets fight. This is another reason why business jets like to just fall out of the sky a lot. Is that business jets usually people who operate those do not hire the experienced ones. They usually hire people who are looking for hours or want a different line of work or can't get work with major carriers. So they're not always.
How are we supposed to make money by hiring competent crews and mechanics? Okay, what the fuck? Do you want us to go out of business?
Yeah, it's not even like.
Do you want me to not afford my third home in the Hamptons?
Well, the funny thing is, it's not even like out of a capitalist greed sort of sense of we have to do this. The actual issue is that a lot of times in order to stay competitive, they can't charge like outrageous rates. Like not everybody can be NetJets, which has like actual money and has like 737s and things like that on retainer. So a lot of these places just they legitimately don't make money if they hire competent people or if they hire like they can't offer legacy airline salaries. And so what happens is that you get guys who do not understand that you don't cross an active runway. And
this is what I want. This is what I want. My highly technically, in theory, highly technically trained crew to be paid peanuts.
yeah, and this has happened so many times. There was an accident in Italy in like 2003 that was caused by this by a business jet taxiing in front of an airliner. There have been other incidences all throughout history of small business jets and private airplanes just stumbling in front of a commercial airliner and killing everybody on board both jets. It's just
There we go.
it's just like I could go on for 15 or 20 minutes. But we must not because we are presumably very long this this recording and we need to go on to the next slide, which is
I'm showing
today,
48 minutes into
today,
this recording.
I should check on OBS. But first, today's theme is on the broad side of things. It's fire.
Fire, fire.
And yeah, I am at 50 minutes, so there we go. Today,
Well, you hit record first,
yes.
la-di-da.
No, today's theme is fire. It burns. Pyromaniacs love it. The rest of us wouldn't be here without it. So, anyways, we are going to go on to the main topic of today's episode for the history theme, the 1903 Paris Metro fire.
God damn, I love this illustration. You can't find art like this anymore.
No, you can't. And what's really
This was drawn for our fucking daily newspaper too.
Oh yeah, it might have even been like engraved or something, like a woodblock engraving or something. Fantastic. We don't get artisanal work like this anymore. No matter. And hey, look, there's the pile of dead bodies. That's a second pile of dead bodies they published in the paper. But so this.
How did we not notice? Think that this would be an issue, but the newspaper because it was an actual photograph. I don't know. That pile of bodies may not have actually existed. This is an artistic interpretation.
So from what I was, it might not be as inaccurate as it seems, and we'll get into that. But so actually, in case you've never heard of this is one of the deadliest subway fires out in history. I think only like the Baku Metro fire in the late 90s is worse.
Yes, 1903 is so modern.
I mean, they had electricity, didn't they?
Fair point. It wasn't the horse-drawn subway. Yeah. It wasn't the pneumatic subway.
Yeah, there wasn't this isn't the
It wasn't the gravity-powered subway that made the fastest Irishman alive.
We didn't have a horse catching on fire. Although I do have a story about a horse catching on fire I can tell you later.
No, I don't. I probably don't want to know.
That's fine. Norfolk Southern did it because, of course, they did. But anyways, this is very
Oh, that horse.
this is very interesting. How just just to point this out, there's not a lot of English language sources on this, so this may be one of the bigger English language accounts of this once we're done, just by virtue
I
that we've done it.
I want you all to know how many trials and tribulations we went through with Google fucking Translate
Uh huh.
trying to figure out what the fuck happened.
Oh yeah, and I think we've got this figured out. But if there's any inaccuracies, please respond to us in an email that is in both French and English. We don't have an email address yet, but if we do, I'll put one in the description of the YouTube video. But 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 you better show us that you speak French better than we speak English, and so that we know, so that, and then you can tell us exactly what we got wrong, because this is no bullshit. We did try for several weeks to figure out what went on here, and this is as best as we can tell what happened. So this is line 2 of the Paris Metro. Um, both of these were both of the Paris Metro was dug in the right around the turn of the century. This is what would later be called Line 2. I believe at the time it was called like two. It was just called the line from Port Dauphine to Nation. I'm not 100% certain. They changed the names coming like right after World War I, as they sort of figured out like there's a 2 and there's a 2A and all that sort of thing. But you can see here there's two maps, one that's very modern and one that is very not. They have changed the names of several of them since since 1918. Notably, to just point out, there is the station called Allemagne, which is Germany station. There's several very good reasons to why that station is now called. Which one is it? That one is now called Jar. Oh fuck! You're gonna see me pronouncing French.
Oh, here we go.
It's called Yaris.
If you speak French natively, or just even fluently, sit down, because we're gonna fuck your language up.
Yeah, I want to say I'm sorry. I took French in high school. Don't. I'm not. I understand it a little, but I think it's called Yares. I jar. Sure. I'm sorry. I'm actually trying, and this is what we get. But it's not called Germany anymore. The same reason why Aubervilliers is called Stalingrad now. Because, which also, I didn't put the picture in here. There is a picture of Stalingrad Station that is just like some really racy sexual advertisement on the wall of the station right next to the sign that says Stalingrad. And I feel like that would make Stalin explode, which is what we always want. But anyways, now we have to talk about the trains involved in this. This is the parallel axle stock. This is the first trains that ran on the Paris Metro, and the primary, I don't want to say villains, but the primary instigators of the incident at hand.
How can something made out of such a gorgeous hardwood be evil?
Um,
Tell me that. Tell me that right now.
well, you could probably beat someone to death with hardwood. That would be evil.
Boy, that's a piece of it. It's not the whole. If all right, all right. If right wingers can say guns don't kill people, people kill people, I can say these trains didn't kill people.
The
People killed people.
the ineptitude of their constructors killed people.
Yup. Yup.
So, so this is the parallel axle stock. This is, and I mean this entirely seriously, baby's first electric train. This is literally the first electric underground train made, I think, ever. This is what they ran. They did not run them for very long, and the fire is why. But essentially, what these were is, as far as I can tell, as far as I can tell, they were originally in the 1900, when the first train left the station, a locomotive that was a single locomotive car at the front that also served as a passenger carriage that was pulling trailer wagons that were, I think they had a class system introduced, like there were first and second class carriages and so forth, and like I don't know how they enforced that, but in either event, the train the trains were running at the trains were horribly underpowered, and the hold on the the trains the trains were horribly underpowered and didn't really work that well, is what I feel like the best way to say it. They just didn't go very far. They didn't go particularly fast. They didn't.
Faster than walking, and you'll be happy because of it.
And they also notably didn't make it to the end of the line all the time. They the line had hills, and there's even an elevated section that obviously required to climb out of the underground, and they didn't really like it that much. These engines weighed 18 tons. Okay?
I'm also noticing
I don't know how what were you going to say?
The classes, there's multiple classes of service within each car. We can see that in the top right photo. There's a class, actually, I don't know.
There's a second
top
class.
Right photo might be just class 2, and the bottom is class 1. But the bottom left shows us a picture of a second class car with the doors open, and it looks fairly spacious and comfortable. And I think the only way that probably was improved to first class was, I feel like those benches got cushions on them, and that was it.
That might be.
Is that what it takes to become the bourgeoisie?
I couldn't tell you. Maybe that's what it takes to become the bourgeois. But
cushions. It's all in the cushions.
Yeah, the line between proletariat and bourgeois is mainly whether your ass goes numb or not. But so anyways, these trains were originally designed to run single-ended, and I suppose what they did was they actually had the engines run around the train at each end of the station at Dauphine and Nation, and if they had to stop anywhere in the middle, I guess they did it like that too. Now, there's some things that they did like by 1902 that just absolutely baffled the pair of us, and we're not 100% sure this is what they did. But as far as we can tell, they did start multiple uniting these cars together fairly quickly, because the trains in total, like you had like the locomotive and then several cars, and then another train consisting of locomotive and several cars, and then they also started instituting locomotives. They're instituting double-ended locomotives, double unit locomotives, at either end of the train that could sort of provide extra oomph. And they did something. I don't know what they did for the multiple unit system. I wish I could understand.
For context, multiple units had only been introduced about 5 years ago.
Yeah, if that. This is
5 years before this.
Yeah.
So Frank Sprague got the patent in 1898.
Yeah, so we don't know specifically what they did. But what it seems like what they did is Baby's first electric train turns into Baby's first electrical multiple unit, where they took the 600-volt DC cable that was presumably getting power from the third rail shoe and ran it down the roof of the train to the engine car at the other end, and either powered it off of that or used it as some form of, I don't even know what, like basically like a multiple unit system. That's what I
The
think.
only thing I can figure is that if they're running 600 volts through there, the the traction motors on the trailing motor were getting power through that cable because I mean modern systems use low voltage, much lower voltage to tell trailing multiple unit controlled locomotives what to do, and then it draws power from either the prime mover and the generator that's on board or from the third rail directly. That multiple unit cable only carries instructions, low voltage instructions to simplify it.
But as far as I can tell, they did just run a 600-volt cable along the roof, and I'm not again. I don't know for certain, but it also appears that this cable, or some cable running in parallel with it, also ran the lights in the train.
Hell yes.
Electrical circuitry was not the forte of these things or anything going on in the Paris subway system at the time, as we will get to. But essentially, this is we have just invented the electric train. Please bear with us as we try and figure out what we're doing. But it's a rapid transit system. These trains were uncomfortable. I presume they were noisy as shit because if you'll notice in these pictures, they are running on unarticulated axles and only two of them.
The sole suspension is the leaf springs that you can see.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And I cannot begin to fathom the ride of the unsprung weight of like the traction motors and things like that, what that's doing to the ride in the locomotive cars. Um,
Mm.
I can't.
You remember Grandpa's old F-150 that bounced along the country roads and it was uncomfortable? And you would hit your head on the ceiling as a small child if you didn't wear the seatbelt, which he probably also chastised you for wearing the seatbelt, but whatever. So that was probably what riding in these was like.
Yeah, it's I've been in in okay. I've been in a thing that could be classified possibly as a train if you squinted, and it had non-articulated axles, and it was the loudest, roughest thing I've ever been in. If you are
The
one, if you ever go to Cheyenne, Wyoming, go to the Terry Bison Ranch and ask to ride their train. They made it out of 6x6 trucks
oh,
and wooden and wooden slat construction up top. It is like being driven around on in a church pew. But that is
I have run I've operated two different dual axle streetcars in regular service, and there was one that the original truck design was got it the nickname the Bouncing Bernie, and that truck design was not available when the car was being rebuilt, so they had a slightly improved design, and that was still terrible. The other one was on original trucks made by Brill in 1962, and it was if you went more than about 12 miles an hour, it was terrifying, especially because it was an open-ended car.
oh god.
So the passengers sat in comfort, but the motorman and the conductor, if I had one, we were up there holding on for dear life because if I hit the wrong spot too fast, like we were just getting yeeted out the side.
Yeah.
And there's no dead man controls on that thing, so it would just keep going for who knows how long.
Yeah. And I can't imagine that these things were running 12 miles an hour. You have to imagine that just in order to like run a system, they'd have to be at least trying for 30. And
Well, no, we should have gone and looked to see if we could find historical data for
I
this.
couldn't find it. I tried. I'm just guessing, but like they can't have been going. They can't have been like they have to have at least been trying to exceed a walking pace. But
That's fair. I mean, 12 miles an hour would compete with a horse
yeah. But
and be a lot more accessible to the public than a horse. And we'll actually get into the specific price. We'll see that here in a little
yeah.
bit.
But
And for our Eurotrash listeners or rest of the world listeners, 12 mph comes out to. Why are you not doing this directly? 19 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, and some other things just to note. Something to keep in the back of your mind. Apparently, these cars required a full rebuild every 20,000 kilometers, which is about 12,000 miles. Uh, which I don't. That doesn't seem like a lot, does it?
Can you imagine taking your shitbox Hyundai Elantra in every 12,000 miles to be completely framed down rebuilt?
Yeah, I thought not. So anyways, the specific motor. We're gonna get into the disaster a little bit now. There we go. So just before, God, there's so many things loading in. I love it. But just to sort of start off our tale, the disaster really started with Train 43, which the lead car in this was M202, and M202 had traveled roughly 19,000 kilometers since its most recent rebuild, and it was actually scheduled to go in for rebuild on the 10th of August 1903. On the 10th of August, it was still running. Presumably, it was going to be taken out of service at the end of the
And
day.
we still have a whole service day. If it goes out of service at 11:59 on the 10th, it's still out of service on the
Yeah,
10th.
but it had been moved from. It had been the parallel axle stock could move between different lines, and so the M202 had been running on line 1 for a few days, and they moved it to line 2 on the 9th. And so it was on 8-car train number 43, which, as you can see down in there, it was M202, B165, B175, A175, A125, B119, B133, and M233. All of those numbers mean roughly something. I believe that the A class cars were the first class cars and B was the second class cars. So cushion versus
That seems to be what I remember. They
yes.
stuck the first class cars in the middle so that you were right there, like by the stairs when you got on or off the train.
Well, funny you mentioned the
'Cause-
stairs. That's not exactly how they had these stations laid out, and that's important for later.
oh,
So I think it might have been following the old rule of steam train travel, where you keep the first class coaches as far away from the disgusting soot belching steam locomotive as possible, which
and if you've got a motor on both ends,
that you
what's
put
farthest? That's in the middle.
because you can see on train 52, A class coach number 13 is at the end.
Oh,
So not certain,
oh.
but that
Gonna make me eat crow on my own podcast. What the fuck?
might no, it's the layout of the station is actually really important, and we'll get to that. But so obviously these stations had different names. So instead of Stalingrad, Juarez, and Colonel Fabienne, we have Aubervilliers, Allemagne, and Combat, or Alman, I think.
I
Anyways,
feel like that one is not pronounced Juarez.
oh,
I'm pretty sure we're not in Mexico City.
Jares?
Jars.
Jars. That must be. I know that J's are pronounced differently, but anyways, the train was traveling. The train set off from Nation, headed to. Hold on, no, it did not set off from Nation. It set off from. There, a lot of shit happened to this train on the 10th. Okay, I've actually pulled up on my patented second screen solution of having another laptop here. That it.
Oh, I thought you weren't gonna give out the secret.
No, I can say that much. It the the M202 had already had a compressor failure earlier in the morning, actually at Coron Station, which we'll get to later. Uh, and it was reportedly replaced and then melted again, which is a fun. Melted is a fun word to use in a safety context. Uh, and so the train was repaired at the terminus over the noon hour at Port Dauphine, and then the train was then taken for a rotation by a mechanic sometime after 1:45 p.m. and had no instance.
Yeah,
And
mechanic gave it a slap on the ass and said it'll be fine
he
and
said it'll be
get your
fine.
shit together and get out there.
And basically, because the driver, which French electric train drivers are called Wattman, which is great. So the Wattman of this train
That's a
had
hardcore name. What are
had
you controlling? You're controlling the watts.
indeed he had reported that the train had an issue, which good on him for doing that. That is literally the only thing we can say good on him for. Uh, and so the train was basically sidelined in Nation for a couple of they say rotations. So I'm assuming that this is basically its schedule slot was taken by something else, and
It has to be.
they let it sit for a couple of hours. So around 4:30, the inspection was completed. A seal on the tail end power car's compressor had indeed melted again, and it had been replaced. However, nothing apart from these air compressor operating problems was noted as significant. Would like to note that the air compressors melted, and that is not something that we really want to note. And so we're
Well,
going.
but getting proper seals cost money.
Indeed, it always costs money.
How am
So
I supposed to save my francs if I'm spending money on air compressor gaskets?
you know, some mon- No, I can't come up with a joke. I lost the joke thread. Pretend I didn't say anything. But anyways, the engineer of this train, whose name I believe
The
is
Wattsman, give him some respect.
The Wattman, whose name is, and I would like to point out, I believe his name is Vinot or Vino, Vinot, but also apparently contemporary reports at the time did give him a fake name for
Ooh, a
purpose
pseudonym.
a pseudonym, or it either is that or the website that has the most information about this gave him a pseudonym, maybe because they thought that that's how GDPR worked or something. But in either event, I'm not 100% certain on this
I,
guy's name, but I'm going to call him Vnote unless
I'm surprised they didn't just publish his whole full name and address.
maybe the French do it differently. But I can't remember if I put it in the
That would be
notes.
nice.
I can't remember if I put it in the notes or not that he had a different name. But I also can't.
Doesn't look like it.
Cool. I didn't think so, but I wanted to make sure. But anyways, the train, Mr. Vino picked up the train at 5:54 and pulled out from from Nation, headed towards Place Dauphine, and arrives at 6:35, and then sets off in the other direction and arrives at Barbès station. It's not called Barbès Rouchechor. No, that's not how that's pronounced. Barb's station. It did not show up at Barb's station until 6:53 p.m. and smoke was coming from the motors. So so that's sort of where we
He's
start
letting out the magic smoke.
the the evil smoke, perhaps one might say. Um, and so something that should be noted is that Barb's station is near the start of the above ground section of line 2 of the Paris Metro, which is something that I feel is important, but nobody has ever really mentioned in discussions of this, which I am going to have to talk about because I think it is actually important. But we'll get there. Anyways, 6:53 p.m. The train arrives with smoke coming from the motors. The passengers are evacuated, and Wattman Vino decides to continue on with the train towards Nation to the maintenance sidings at Nation once again. And oh, that's right. I think his name is Chauvin because I found his real name and I get got by myself in my own podcast. Because they
Oh, I thought maybe Vino was his last, like, surname pseudonym.
maybe I don't know what his name is. I don't I
Chauvin Vito. Oh,
Show
that would be a name.
that would be a hell of a name.
Watman Chauvinvino.
But anyways, so about 3 minutes later, the train pulls in. About 3 minutes after departing, the train pulls um, into Germany Station. I'm just going to call it fucking Germany Station. I can't butcher the pronunciation. Too many people will yell at me. But it pulls into Germany Station on fire yet again. And or and the Watman asks the station master for a fire extinguisher, which they're not the standard chemical fire extinguishers that we all know and love nowadays. As far as I can tell, it was a glass bottle or a glass
Oh,
orb.
please tell me it was the glass bottle you just fucking throw at the
Yes,
fire.
yes, it was. It was a
Oh, those things are so rad.
it was a glass.
They're so carcinogenic, but so rad.
Yes, it was basically a glass grenade, and that's what they called.
Hell yes, brother.
And and yeah, so basically, and interestingly enough, the train is now empty. The train was evacuated at Barbès, and but it is still picking up people. Employees of the underground have been hopping on to help. And I say help like because the train is on fire and it does appear to be on fire from the motors. So multiple guys have gotten on specifically to look at the to sort of like assist with the making sure it doesn't catch on fire efforts. So
You
several track workers joined at Barbès. I think a couple of conductors got on as well.
you
And
know at least some of those guys were just like on the way home after their shift and it's like, oh fuck, this train might get me home sooner than the regular scheduled train.
yeah. And so basically what happens is the train German rolls into Germany station, and are they start the two track workers actually came on, and they 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 they're helping out like with the firefighting and like looking out the front because what had happened, and they determined this first at Barbès, and then this happens again at Germany, is that the motors were on fire. So obviously, what do is you take off, take disconnect the train from the power. That disconnects the train from the power. Fire stops, right? But we have a
Easy.
problem. We have a problem there. The train
D-
is an electric train, which means that it cannot
oh,
move without electricity.
oh. Hmm.
So what happens
Little problem.
is that with his help at hand, the train sets off from Barbès and continues on to Germany with the electrics on, and thus the fire breaks out again immediately, which is why he pulls into Germany and asks for a fire extinguisher. Now, something that I would like to note: the train is made entirely of wood. The train is made entirely of wood, except for the metal frames. But what is made of wood is the third rail shoes.
How? mhm. How? How
I assume that
do,
there's just a
do they,
wooden rod that extends down to the tracks, and then the electrical wiring goes up there.
does
But
wood even conduct
no,
electricity
I assume
well
they
enough
ran
to?
wires up it or something. Not the collector shoe itself, but the thing that connected the third rail shoe to the car.
Okay, so there was something conductive directly touching the third rail, but to hold it onto the third rail,
Yes,
that was wood. That
that
was
was
a
wood.
wood
And
device.
based on what
Okay,
happens
no
further
problems, no
what
notes.
and based on what happens further on in this tale, one must assume that it isn't like how most subway trains are nowadays, where it lifts on and attaches from the bottom. It has to have been a gravity solution, where it drops down
No
to the
notes,
top of the rail.
no problems.
Again,
This cannot go wrong.
no problems. Um, at Barbès, they put the fire out, allegedly. Guys got on to make sure it doesn't happen. They roll out to Germany, and the train immediately catches on fire again. And notably, they did not isolate the front engine at all. he
No, because then you're going to be under. They're already on the verge of being too underpowered. If
yeah,
you take out an entire motor, you're
on
done.
an 8-car train, yeah, they're fucked. So they request a fire extinguisher from the station master, and then they I again not clear whether the fire started at Germany Station or as they left. But either way, because some sites say that it was as a precaution they asked for the fire extinguisher, and others say that they needed it. But in either event, by the time they get to combat, the fire has gotten significantly worse. The third rail shoes are made of wood. They cannot raise them because they are on fire.
Why would you want to take it off power, though?
Because that would
Because
put
if you
the
take it
fire
off power,
out.
you can't move. But
That
if you
would
take
put
it off power, it can't move. Fire
well.
be damned. I
So
paid for a ticket. I want to ride.
well, there's nobody on this train, so that's the thing.
No
So
paying passengers, but I volunteered to help. Therefore, I'm offering my labor in exchange for this ride.
but they cut the fire at they cut the fire and the power at 7:18, and the fire goes out at 7:23 p.m. So clearly a rapid discussion of 5 minutes or less. The power is put back on at 7:23. They can't disconnect M202. They can't drive it from M233 at the other end of the train. Their solution is to have Train 52, which is at this point waiting behind them at Germany Station, push them all the way to Nation. At which Train 52, keep in mind, is a significantly smaller 4-car train with one engine. So, but they can't turn off the engine up front, so maybe 2.5 locomotives is what they would have at this point, with
I
12
want to
cars.
know what attempts to raise the third rail shoes weren't working. Like, did they just try to pull the lever and go, oh, well, it didn't work. We're all out of ideas.
It said something about pallets. It doesn't say exactly what that means, which I think is a translation issue, but I'm assuming they tried to lever it up with sticks, and they probably could get it off the track, but whatever that used to secure it to the car when it wasn't in use probably had burned through.
Or if they couldn't lift it high enough, arcing may have been an issue.
Arcing could have been made an issue too, because 600 volts DC is very
Oh,
angry.
it will reach out and grab your ass. It doesn't it has a long reach.
Yes, and so at this point, Train 52 goes out of service and abandons its passengers on the platform to push Train 43. Because also,
Good luck,
they
everybody.
attempted to cut off. I said that was M233 was unsuccessful. The reason why was they tried to use M233 to push it. The circuit breaker tripped and the reverser burned out.
Oh,
So actually,
oh,
it would have just been one engine for 12 cars. I don't know what their thought process was. They weren't getting fucking jack shit. But
I'm I'm also wondering because circuit breakers weren't really a thing at this point, were they? They were just fuse boxes.
again, maybe this is a translation error, but notably they are not a thing on the Paris Metro, as we will find out very soon. But something else that I really need to point out, and this is something that actually no one has talked about, is that at 7:26 p.m. A celestial level event happens. The sun goes down. Now, why is this important? Because Germany Station is the last station on the elevated section of Line 2, going towards Nation, right?
We're going
So,
into the mole people territory.
well, no, that's actually not what the issue is. The issue is that the passengers from Train 43 were kicked off at Barbès. Train 52 picked them up. And keep in mind, they went from an 8-car train to a 4-car train that already had people in it. And so they all squeezed into there and have spent, at this point, almost half an hour on that train trundling through the elevated section, because the elevated section goes from Barbès to Germany, and watching the sun go down while some nonsense occurs further up the line, delaying them even further. And then they are thrown out of the train onto the platform again, like for a second time. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people gave up and went home at this point, but the French people are nothing if not tenacious, and a lot of them didn't. They paid for this train ticket. They are going to go home. They are going to ride the train home. It does not matter. We are fully into sunk cost territory at that point. So they are just like waiting, and like this next fucking train is going to get us there if it kills somebody. That's what we know as foreshadowing. Something else. There was a sighting at Belleville Station. Absolutely no reason why they didn't put it there, but they didn't. Nobody's quite sure why. If I had to guess, I would say that maybe the station master at Belleville didn't want a train that was actively on fire in his station, because Combat and Belleville are underground. Belleville and Combat are underground, so having a fire there would be bad. But so this is where we get at around 7:32. Train 43 arrives at Combat and begins pushing Train 43 out of the station. And actually it's going fine. They continue going on. They make it as far as the tunnel between Couronnes and Ménilmontant. I actually looked up how to pronounce that one, because I looked up a video, and Ménilmontant is how that's pronounced. And between those two stations, when everything gets significantly worse all at once. Everything has gotten worse, because the train is now completely engulfed on fire.
My wooden train, coated in
lacquer,
ultra toxic flammable varnish. Yeah, lacquer ignites. How is this possible?
Especially, it must have been really shocking to everybody on the train, because passing through Couronnes Station, it was noted as being very little smoke discharge from the train. So whatever happened was essentially a flashover in the tunnel between Couronnes and Ménilmontant. I'm almost wondering if a passing train went by in the other direction and there was a piston effect that happened, where like a strong gust of wind managed to stoke enough fire that that something finally combusted.
I mean, it might not even take that. If this thing went on from the first elevated station to the first underground station,
no, it went
entering the tunnel may have done that.
No, they went 4 stops. So
maybe. Oh, I don't know.
So Combat Station was underground. Combat Station was underground. They made it almost 4 stations in the tunnel before the fire started.
Before the fire started, or before they noticed it started?
Before the train stopped abruptly without being commanded to.
Oh boy, here we go.
Before the train rather abruptly stopped working. And into this situation, and there was to quote the website that I'm reading off, which is called Metro Passion, about 25 meters from the station, another short circuit occurred with great intensity. Detonation similar to cannon shots rose from the tunnel. Wattman, Vino, and the conductor then blew the distress whistle. See, this is a site that this is the site that calls him Vino. At this signal, the train was stopped. The front engine M202 had barely entered the station. in an instant, the engine was surrounded by flames. So another possibility is that the air had actually been maybe extinguishing the fire just enough, and when they stopped, it had enough time to leap to something far more flammable. But
It's the perfect storm.
it is the perfect storm of just like fire is hungry. But in any ways, this is this is about this is getting real bad. So it was around 7:37 p.m. and the fire spread to the other cars. So uh, everybody on this train jumped for their lives. No attempt was made to move the train to anywhere else. Nobody else was nobody else, like, they ran through the tunnel. They tried to warn people, but it did not do much good. And then at 7:45 p.m., because they had parked the train had come to a stop almost directly under an electrical junction box of some kind from the Père Lachaise substation, which is, I think, the next station down the line. Uh, basically, the lights went out. The lights went out, and so did the traction power. But at that point, the train was already fully engulfed, so that didn't matter. But what it does seem to indicate is that there isn't a lot of electrical circuitry going on here. It does appear that maybe the same circuits that run the track do run the lights in the station. And I'm not certain how they did that. But what
Early electrical engineering is just, do you have a circuit? Yes. Okay, good.
But whatever they did, essentially then, whatever happened essentially meant that the power going, I think, probably going from Ménilmontant back towards Belleville and Combat, the lights went out and everything stopped. Because if there's a
That
substation,
is a spicy circuit if it has lights and traction power for that whole stretch. Holy shit.
if it's not, they routed everything through the same junction box,
Oh,
and
for
the
fuck's sake.
train screeched to a stop directly under it. Again, not entirely clear, but in either event, a prime example of don't do this. But something else has occurred during all of this time as smoke begins to pour out into Ménilmontant station, because M202 was basically directly underneath the cross-track footbridge that led to the ticketing concourse. So smoke is already filling this place and making it unbreathable within a few minutes. But something else has happened. You might notice that there is a third train listed in here, and that is Train 48, which at 7:39 p.m. rolls into Couronne Station, blissfully unaware of what is going on up the line. That is a 4-car train, composition unknown, except that it was 2 second-class cars, in addition to, I presume, a motor and a first-class car, similar to Train 52. And what Train 48 is slammed to the gills, because Train 48 was the train immediately following Train 52. Train 48
3 trains worth of people in one.
That is exactly
one
what
little
happened.
baby train.
Train 48 pulled into Germany Station, it pulled into Germany Station, picked up the people who had gotten off of Train 52, some of whom had gotten off of Train 43, and continued along its way through the tunnel without really being aware that there was anything wrong ahead of them. So,
homie, I've been there. I sympathize with them.
So the train.
Oh, this sucks.
So the train continues until it gets to Couronne, where they can actually see the combined Train 4352 ahead of them. But I guess because the fire is so far away at this point that it becomes almost impossible to see it. All they can see is the tail lights of what I would assume would be car A13 and nothing else. So they're just sitting there, I presume, doing the 1900s French version of twiddling your thumbs, waiting for a clear signal, which never comes. So had a several guys had a. Oh wow, I'm sorry. I went to the next page. The lights went out between Menil-Montant and Porte Dauphine, which I would like to point out is the end of the line. So, so basically, every single light going back the way that these trains had come went out.
The four light bulbs running in a
So
series circuit on between all of these stations is they're all just fucked. One probably popped from the heat and it just shuts off the rest of them because the circuit is incomplete.
maybe, but but yeah. So everything goes wrong at this point. In Menil-Montat, people are evacuating, although some apparently did ask to watch the train burn because that's what you did in the 1900s. But I guess
Yeah,
they were evacuated. Watman Chauvin Vino, whatever his name is, he ran through the tunnel towards Père Lachaise station, and everybody in Menil-Montant was evacuated by the station staff, who were presumably saying in French, "What the fuck are you doing? Get out of here! You can't watch this." And so
but they would have had to all walk past the burning motor to get to Menil-Montant.
they would to get out of Menil-Montant, yes, but people are stupid, and so they probably did. But apparently nobody.
Okay. Okay.
So nobody does. Although actually, at Menil-Montant, a police officer on duty at the station at the time of the accident, one of the last to be able to leave the station through the mouth. As he leaves, he sees people rushing inside, apparently to carry out rescue operations. None of them seem to return. So presumably, this is an environment that is carrying things that end with chemical names like ionide and oxide, where you breathe these for more than a few seconds and you die.
But oxide is oxygen based, so it must be just fine, right? There's no
Yes,
danger here.
yes, and so about 11 other guys were on the two. Aside from aside from Vino and a station worker who escaped through Menil-Montant, 11 employees were on the two coupled trains. They attempted to turn off power. Maybe that's what actually happened. Is they hit the bright red lever switch that said arrête on it, and that's why the traction power went out at the same time as the lights did. But in either event, the in either event, three people emerged through the tunnel at Couronne, where Train 48 is, before the lights went out, and another one arrived. Another one arrived before the smoke did, and the last one arrived in complete and total darkness. So things are going poorly in a hurry, but not as bad as it's going to be for the people on train 48, because these pictures are the two pictures on that are sort of bottom arranged are what Couronne Station is now, and then you've got the black and white picture that is obviously Couronne Station in period with dual axle stop
I
there,
really don't see that much of a difference.
and there isn't
The
at
chairs
all.
changed.
There isn't any difference at all. And then finally, you have a map that is a reproduction of one that was published at the time of a.
Oh, I take back what I said about the stairs being central, and that's
Yes,
probably why
that is why.
first class is in the middle. Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
And so what happened next is a tragic coincidence of human instinct, French belligerence, and poor design and sign and guide and human guidance or sign making skill. Basically, the station is laid out really badly because this saved money. Having an exit only at one end of the station saved the tunneling costs. So
Makes sense.
what happened was that as the was that basically a call for an evacuation was made a couple of minutes was made a couple of minutes after the train caught fire. The it probably wasn't communicated in the best way. The guard of the combined train ran through the tunnel, hopped up onto the platform, and like basically spoke to the station master, presumably in the most animated and unintelligible French anyone has ever heard, because he had to sprint all the way down. And like God, could you imagine being that guy running out of the tunnel and seeing a packed train sitting in the station?
Oh,
And so
I got this. I got this. I got this. No, I don't got this.
yeah,
Oh shit.
and the station master attempted to the station master had heard the explosion sounds. So he knew that something was wrong, and in fairness to him, he did exactly what he was supposed to do, which is he attempted to call Menil-Montat, which he couldn't get them on the phone because they were all running away or dead. And then, essentially what happened, he understands the situation from the guard, which is on fire, the train's on fire, and immediately instructs an evacuation of of train 48 in the station. Now, I want everyone to put themselves in the shoes of a French commuter in 1903. It is August. It is hot. It is sticky. We're at the end of a heat wave that has just been coming through in the middle of August. You are wearing whatever the fuck it is French people who have enough money to take the train wear. I'm assuming layers of wool. No,
Everything was
plumbing,
wooled.
plumbing
I don't.
has.
I don't know that there's any other option.
I don't.
Wool or linen, but they're probably, if you can afford the subway, you're probably wearing wool.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I'm certain that bathing has not been universally invented yet. People probably. I don't think daily showers are a thing. Deodorant certainly isn't. And so you are hot, you smell, you feel disgusting. Everyone around you is in the same boat, and you have just spent the better part of an hour standing on a fucking subway train platform, watching the sun go down while you could be at home doing whatever it was French people in 1903 did, which is presumably fucking your mistress, or your mistress's mistress. Whatever the hell it is that you did. Whatever the hell it is that French people do. Okay? You could be doing that, but instead this fuck-ass novelty of a train that you stupidly decided to pay 3 francs for has broken down for the third goddamn time. To quote Metro Passion again, several protest violently because they had already been evacuated from trains 43 at Barbès or 52 at Alemán. Thus, they are in no hurry to evacuate the station. And that is, nobody wants to get off the train. And because I am certain that anybody who actually was intending to get off at Coron got off at Coron when the train pulled in. So anybody who is familiar with the layout of the station has already departed the train. So what we have now is a quirk of human instinct, which is that, have you ever heard one of those airport or Disney tip books that say always go to the left because the line is shorter there? Do you know why that is?
Oh.
It's because most humans.
Oh, we're hardwired to go to the right, aren't we?
Most humans are hardwired to go in the direction of their dominant hand, and most of humanity is right-handed. So, the stairs are to the left. The stairs are to the left if you are coming on a train bound for Nation. So anybody who knows that instinctually will do that, and anybody who knows so I'm presumably there's one left-handed guy on the train who was fine, but everybody else did not know that. They have probably never been.
Lefty Larry's over there going, I don't know why the fuck they all went that way. I just, like, it seemed obvious to me. I just go to the left, and sure enough, there were stairs.
And so that, yeah, basically Lefty Larry runs for safety and survives. But anyways, entering into the equation is also exactly what you don't do in in an emergency situation, which is be a guard from Train 52 who ran through the tunnel, clambered up onto the platform, and shouted, "Everyone for themselves."
Oh,
The passengers who did not know what was going on. That is something that we need to make clear. You can make fun of them for being French. They had absolutely no idea of the situation that was about to unfold and happen to them, and they assumed that this fuck-ass train had broken down for the third time in an hour. So there was absolutely no reason for them to
it's
get
just
off.
a regular ass breakdown. Yeah.
So they immediately began assaulting the guard of Train 52, asking for their three francs back, or
As you do. He collected the money. He can give it back.
my 3 sous, which I think is a unit of coinage in France. Again, I apologize to French people. I don't know how the money is broken down, but they were seriously asking for their money back as this happened. And another guard or a station officer was telling them, "You need to leave," and they're like, "When I get my money back, how about that? I didn't get to where I want to go. I want my money back." And then
My life is worth these 3 francs. Give it to me.
And then suddenly, through the mouth of the tunnel from Menilmontat comes a wall of black smoke, seemingly all at once, which must. So, within seconds, Couronne Station is completely engulfed in choking black smoke. It is impossible to see the hand in front of your face. Nobody on the train has been here before, because presumably they're all looking down at their 1903 PlayStation called the newspaper as the train goes through every day. They have not they have no way out, and they are groping in the darkness, to quote the website, to get out. And they turn right. They turn right out of the station, out of the train doors, feel their way down the platform, and amass themselves along the far wall of the station and die of smoke inhalation there. Because
That's brutal. That's brutal.
And die of smoke inhalation. And meanwhile, upstairs in what this place calls Vestibule de la Gare, which is just, I believe, the ticket-taking concourse, there was a line of people who were waiting to have their tickets refunded. 23 of them already had. And the...
Now, I do have to ask you, we could see on the map there's a cluster A, which is people who have gone to the right into their impending doom. What is that labeled B?
I believe that is an emergency staircase down to track level.
Oh.
That is basically like you see that little yellow thing right in the center of the picture, the center picture, at the edge of the right here.
Oh no, or like access to the tunnel.
That's a staff only entrance. But that there is no exit from Couronne at the opposite end of the platform. There still isn't to this day. But as far as I can tell, everybody the lights went out in the ticket vestibule as one of the guards from the combined 53, 42, with the combined trains, they told everyone to leave, and some people did and some didn't, but I believe mostly everybody was able to escape out the exits before they could be killed. But I
don't like most.
It really was bad. The smoke coming out of so nobody could even get into. All the firefighters went to Menilmontat at first, because that's where the fire was coming out of. Couronne Station, they couldn't even enter until almost 11 p.m. And it took until almost almost 5 in the morning to get bodies out. Uh, so 65 people died. Let me go back one slide. 65 people died here at dot A. So that was most of the people on the train. Um, a couple of two were found still on the train. Two more were brought. Two more actually were found in the tunnel, having climbed down staircase B and tried to make a break for it. And then I'm assuming, because that is not 77, I'm assuming that several others died either at Menilmontat or in the ticket vestibule at Couronne.
I mean, there was plenty of chances for smoke inhalation there.
Yeah, and so in the end, 77 people died, which is one of the, which makes this at the time one of the deadliest fires in history, and almost all of the dead were working class victims, as one would expect. They mostly all died. They all died of asphyxiation from inhaling carbon monoxide. The gas was sucked through the tunnel into Couronne, where it was accumulated, and official condolences poured in from all over the world, as far away as even the Pope sent in a thing. But
well, of course, if anything knows anything about a tragedy of train systems, it's the Pope, who doesn't even have his own rolling stock.
Indeed.
Well, I guess at that time they did.
They did. Do you want to guess how long the line was out of service for?
This is the time where there wasn't a whole lot to repair in terms of technical knowledge, so human life wasn't regarded as much. So I'm gonna guess 5 days tops.
9.
Ooh, I wasn't that far off.
No stops were made at
although over a week was more than I expected.
Yeah, I assume they had to do a lot of rewiring, and probably the trains had welded themselves to the tracks at that point.
Yeah, getting those out was probably a son of a bitch. You couldn't just drag it with another train, with another locomotive, because they were so underpowered.
Mm-hmm. And then they did not make stops at Couronne or Menilmontat, which must have just been a hell of a thing to look out the windows at on the first day of service. Was just
God, they were running trains through there before even all the bodies were cleaned up. It's like, ooh.
I think they got all the bodies out, but that would have been ladies and gentlemen, if you look out the left side of the train, you can see your sister. She's right there. Yes, I'm sorry, little...
Everybody look out the right side of the train. Keep looking out the right side. Did you see it? Oh, you guys just missed it.
Yes, no, I'm sorry, little Gaston, that you have to leave school and take up work. But there's the reason why. Just look out the window. Just remember that life is pointless. You'll become an avant-garde.
Nobody has trauma like Gaston.
Nobody has trauma like Gaston. This is the birthplace of French avant-garde filmmaking, I'm certain.
Born in the underground.
Little Gaston making neo-populist... No, wait. Making avant-garde black and white hand puppet shows in bed at night to process his trauma. Or something.
All right.
But
Joe, what did we learn?
What did we learn? Nothing. Actually, we learned quite a bit. We learned that the Couronne station opened to passenger traffic in September 19th of that year. But we learned some things. First of all, use different circuits for lighting and track power. Also, don't make them be one continuous circuit. And even if they hadn't been one continuous circuit, the number of circuits and the lack of emergency lighting that was here was abominable.
It was bad. I have seen this applied in real life, and the practical application makes it very worth the separation of circuits.
Yes. Number 2, don't make trains out of wood. You thought it was just because they were terrible in collisions, but also they can catch on fire and kill your ass. So don't do that. Don't make trains out of wood. I didn't think we needed to say this, but we do.
Well, they had to learn it eventually.
Yeah. Number three, have fire alarms, emergency signage, and emergency exits. All of this stuff sounds really basic and boilerplate, but I need to point out they did
There
invent the
were,
electric train. This is a new technology at the time.
and every single safety rule is written in blood.
Yes,
When you see that silly little exit sign and go, well, duh, of course the exit is this way. It's because of situations like this. Not everybody inherently knows which way to go. And obviously, even the seemingly inherent instinct of where to travel can get you killed.
absolutely. And then finally, this one's not really a safety thing, but have more places where broken trains can be parked out of the way. If they had put the train into the siding at whichever station, like at like Combat or the one right after at Belleville, this would never have happened. I mean, unless they left the train connected to the power or something stupid like that, which they might have done, but it would have been far more likely that the train would have been off and in a siding, and they would have just dealt with it.
This is another one that I have seen the direct impacts of, and having those options can save your bacon, not only for the passengers on the affected train, but to be able to just like shoosh them off the train and like, hey, fuck off at this station. I don't care if you're going here or not. You're getting off this train, and to be able to get that train the fuck out of the way of everything else can make a humongous difference.
Yeah, especially to like outside of a safety context, just your operation simplification by
Oh
be,
yeah, those passengers are going to be a lot less pissed if there's another train in 10 minutes.
yeah, especially if that train isn't waiting while the enfeebled, broken down train has to hobble its way the entire length of the line.
Ugh.
But
That one hurts.
but yeah, no, things went there's a lot that could be learned, and in fairness, a lot of it was. The the Paris Metro has implemented, emergency signage and stuff. I don't happen to know how they lay out their electric circuits, but they definitely don't work like that now because there hasn't really been a serious fire like that on the metro since.
I mean, if they can ever take just a small portion out of service because something is wrong, it doesn't matter what's wrong. If they could just take out a portion of the line, not the entire line, then they've learned. Which, like you said, we haven't heard about anything quite like this since then.
Yeah, no, we really haven't. And so that concludes the history section of the podcast. And I would like to apologize for everything, just in case you thought it sucked. We
Especially the French.
especially the French,
Especially the French. We are so sorry.
but also just my ability to speak and read words that I wrote. But anyways, now we throw things over to Zach for his section called "But Did You Die?"
And as the bottom left says right there, well, maybe. Maybe. We learned some lessons, but there were more to be learned. Let's hit that next slide. So we are traveling to the far-fetched land, the true hive of scum and villainy called Washington, D.C. for this section, and we're going to look at the good old Washington Metro. And on January 12th, 2015, there was a fire, and it wasn't at L'Enfant Metro Station, but it was fairly close.
Fires
Hit that
happening
next slide.
near French-named metro station seems to be the theme today. I should have made that the theme.
Apparently. Honestly, I didn't notice it until about 20 minutes ago. I happened to look at the notes that I have about this. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's a French name. All right. So what happened on that fabled date, January 12th, 2015? Not shown in the diagram on the left, there was a northbound Yellow Line train, number 508, called the control center for WMATA and said that, hey, there is smoke in the tunnel near the interlocker right there where the yellow and the green lines split. He saw that at roughly 1507.
And would we be
The
correct in assuming that the green and yellow lines do not actually run parallel to each other, as shown in this picture, in this diagram?
there, yeah. So where the lines come together and they're side by side, they're actually sharing the same track right there. That I don't know why it was represented this way. Just like up here, the orange, silver, and blue lines are not three separate tracks going through Linfond Plaza. It's
All one.
three lines, but they're
Yeah.
all operating on the same track. And this WMATA's kind of cool. I kind of like this. I've been to this station, and unfortunately I didn't learn about this incident until after I had visited, so I couldn't really geek out. But this is a multi-level metro station. Um, I think yellow and green are above the orange, silver, and blue. I might be mistaken. That might be in first. So
I
don't
think you're
don't
right.
get
I think
angry
it
at me.
is. I think it is above that because there's actually a really cool picture of L'Enfant Plaza when they only had, I think, the orange line in service, and so the yellow and green line station is there with no tracks in it, and they had to walk. They had to like barricade it off so that people wouldn't like, because that was how you sort of got through the station in the early days.
Oh, that's cool.
I
That's
posted it
cool. When
in.
it's in progress.
This was in like the mid 70s, I think, because a lot of the metro, the yellow and green lines, were like the latest additions to the DC Metro rail system because of the tortured develop stage of like trying to build through our nation's capital. But
I back in the
but yeah,
70s, man. That's
the DC Metro is really cool, and yeah, I
I
it's
I will
real.
say that I'm very butthurt having been to the DC area and ridden the Washington Metro and seeing what could have been because I used to work for a system that was primarily based off of the design and operational procedures of the Washington Metro. And the place that I work for just turbo fucked it. And they tried to copy it so close that I have in my possession a training document that um, somebody looked over when they made it. And they took several of these different training documents and took out the WMATA logo and replaced it with the appropriate logo for the transit agency that I worked for. And on this one document that is still being distributed, at least as far as 2017 when I went through training, it still has the WMATA logo on it.
That's excellent.
It going out there and truly like seeing the similarities and recognizing some of the signaling systems and even the control systems on the train because as of recording all of these lines are still being controlled manually. They're supposed to be automatically controlled, but there was an incident, maybe we'll cover it in another episode, that forced WMATA to put all of these trains under manual control again.
I think they're just starting to bring it back in like
I had
as of
heard
this
this.
year.
I had heard this. Yes, 2025.
But I haven't heard anything else of it. Also, going back to your question, why does the diagram look like that? Because the NTSB makes the worst documentation for these things.
Oh,
I
how can you make it the most confusing? Look at any NTSB document.
Yeah, like if only the USCSB was able to produce NTSB documents, we would actually understand what went wrong in many of these things. The USCSB, who has like four investigations a year and goes all out with their media budget.
They could have explained this. I definitely do feel like they could have explained it clearer. Like you didn't. There's several things. There's several things I would have done here, but we're looking at this image. North is up, south is down. Northbound train reports seeing smoke near the interlocking where the yellow and the green lines actually physically split. Um, the rail control center, which is a fancy term for a dispatcher, but they didn't want to be confused with bus dispatchers. So they made a special title for these people who control the movements of the trains, and that is a rail controller. Rail control calls train number 302, a southbound Yellow Line train, and says, "Hey, after you depart Linfont Plaza, look out for smoke and tell us what you find." So train 302 arrives Linfont Plaza, opens the doors, loads passengers, shuts the doors, and then travels roughly 800 feet south of the station, far enough south that the entire train is out of the open area that makes the station, because this is all underground, and hits smoke so thick that the operator says, "I don't think it's safe to continue." That's a good call. That is a very good call. That operator then tells the control center what he has found, and the control center tells him, "You know what? Stand by for a minute. Just hang tight there." Meanwhile, they don't take any other action, it seems. So, train 510, another southbound Yellow Line train, that operator had been paying attention to the radio and had caught up to train 302 in terms of signal indications, had caught up as far as they could go, was listening to the radio and figured out that train 510 was sitting at a red signal because 302 was still in Linfont Plaza talking to the control center. And finally, 302 leaves and 510 proceeds south and arrives at Linfont Plaza. 302 arrives at the point where of no further travel and reports their findings, but they are still sitting within a signal block immediately south of Linfont Plaza, so 510 cannot move. It has a red signal in front of it. It is somewhere around this point where the brevity of the situation starts to set in within the rail control center. The assistant superintendent of the official term at WMATA is the Rail Operations Control Center, aka the dispatcher's office. Taps the shoulder of the guy working the desk controlling the situation and says, "Hey, you're doing okay, but you're a little too new. I want somebody more experienced on this situation." Taps him out and assigns a more experienced controller to the situation, who was not given a proper briefing. At that point, 302 is still reporting that there is still smoke pouring in. Asks for instructions on what to do, and the controller tells him, "Turn off your fresh air shutters." There are two different types of switches that aren't on the main control console within these trains. There are bypass switches, which are, I'm not sure on which side, but they're either to the left or the right of the operator, and these are sealed switches. You have to flip up a cover to toggle the position of the switch. Break a seal, flip up a cover, then you can toggle the switch, and those can only be activated with specific instruction from a field supervisor or the Rail Operations Control Center.
Yeah, they have to launch.
However,
hit that like they're launching a nuke.
Pretty much. If you return a train to the yard with a broken seal on one of these bypass switches, no matter what it is, it had better be documented that that train received instructions to break the seal. If not, that is, in some circumstances, a fireable offense. Depends on which one was broken. So the fresh air shutters are controlled by a bypass switch, and that would actually prevent the HVAC system on the train from drawing fresh air from the outside to bring it into the train, and it would then begin recirculating air that was already in the train. and just running that through the AC or the heat. Probably the heat, since that it was January 12th. It gets cold enough in DC. They probably needed that. However, Train 302's operator has not been adequately trained on what a fresh air shutter bypass is. So instead of looking at his rack of bypass switches, he opens up a small cabinet that's also in the cab and looks at a series of circuit breakers. And these circuit breakers all have various functions, but all they do is cut the power to various systems. 302 is operating a 6-car train, and what 302's operator turns off, instead of cutting fresh air circulation to the entire train, because this signal would have been traveled throughout the entire train if he had used the bypass switch. Instead, what he does is he turns off the AC system on the lead car, just the one he is in. So he has 5 cars behind him that are still sucking in smoke from the tunnel.
Yeah, don't do that. That is
No,
and even
it's
even better, I bet he has no idea this is happening.
no, absolutely none. Because as the diagram shows here, he has started to enter a curve. His field of vision is restricted to, if he turns around and looks behind him out the little window on the cab door, he can only see the first car. The view into the second car is obstructed because of the curve and the articulation of the cars. He has no clue that anything else is happening. 510 arrives at L'Enfant Plaza, and that train is supposed to pull all the way to the south end of the platform and stop. That is its normal loading position. It stops about 100 feet short because that operator also sees smoke rolling out of the tunnel. Thankfully, that entire train is still within the platform. So the 510 is in a good spot for evacuation, which is good because the one Metropolitan Transit cop that is on the train also sees the smoke, realizes something's up, and begins evacuating the train and searching the train for any stragglers and setting them out and up to the surface level. This includes the operator of 510. The
And I've
operator
seen
for
the
train
video of
510.
this
Oh, it hurts how goofy it is.
because it's in like fast motion, so you can almost supply like the Benny Hill theme as the guys are running through the increasingly smoky station.
Yeah,
It's bad.
the crew, the crew on 510, the lone operator, because these are single crew trains, plus the Metropolitan Transit Police that already had a unit on that train, did the correct thing and evacuated. They were not supplied with proper information for the situation at hand. That's not their fault. But everybody leaves. The operator on train 510 tries to report this to the train control center via handheld radio and via telephone, and receives no answer on either one. That operator cannot report that that train is evacuated and nobody is present.
Uh-oh.
So, new rail controller has been sat down at the desk, supposedly more experienced. He tells train number 302 to reverse ends and return to L'Enfant Plaza. That operator did so, but could not get a signal to return to the station because that block was occupied by train 510. So then, rail control tries to call train 510 and can't get a hold of the operator because there's nobody on that train. And in that particular moment, I read one report that the operator just happened to be standing at a spot where their handheld radio could not pick up a signal.
Ugh.
It was just a poor choice. The Operator of train 302 uh, says that they can't get a signal. They can't see if there is a train at Linfon Plaza because of the thick smoke, um, and can't move back. So before they want to try to give train 302 permission to pass a red signal to return to the station, they need to find out what's going on with 510. Thankfully, by that point in time, the operator of train 510 had changed their position. In my experience, they may have rotated their body 90 degrees, and all of a sudden that radio that's stuck in their on their belt can pick up a signal again. It's a weird situation. Radio waves are weird. I don't know if I will ever understand them. But then they get the call. Hey, 510, what's going on? They're able to return and say, my train was evacuated. Metropolitan Police and I found smoke coming out of the tunnel. So we evacuated. All the passengers are out. They're all up at surface level. There's nobody on that platform at Linfon Plaza. So then they have to run the operator and a Metropolitan cop back down to the platform because train 510 is in the way.
And they couldn't just push it or anything? Like 302 couldn't just roll up slow and just push it out of the way?
Yeah, there is a lot of bureaucracy in every single train movement, and you have to go through procedure first before you try anything extreme.
Fair enough.
So, as the operator and at least one Metropolitan cop are working their way down a series of staircases to get back to the platform to the now empty train 510, the Washington, D.C. Fire Department has begun responding to numerous calls from passengers about smoke at Linfon Plaza. These guys are all trained to handle fires on the subway because it is such an integral part of the DC area. So the first thing that they do is that for their safety, they go down to Linfon Plaza, they open a box that is there specifically for them, and they kill power to the subway. Right as the operator for 510 is getting on her train.
Oh, no. Come on, guys. They did so well on 9/11 with coordinating everything. Don't NYPD it now.
They killed the power, which was a fair call. They thought it maybe, as far as they knew, it could have been an issue with train 302 in the tunnel. They didn't know. They took the safest course and killed the power.
Yeah. Now I have a question really quick,
Go on.
which is that
Go on.
Is this by any chance, considering there is a diagram of what appears to be a third rail power network on the other side of the screen, did they cut Linfon Plaza Station's power, but not the power to the arc that was happening?
Correct.
Oh, no.
They killed one side of the problem. They killed one side of the problem.
Oh, no.
Oh. So, at this point, the situation is seemingly safe. They are not going to get the shit electrocuted out of them if they step on the third rail. So they check with train 510 on the platform. They see the operator and the Metropolitan Police officer there. And those two confirm to the fire department that this train has been evacuated. They were going to try to move it, but there's no power for reasons they did not know. They were going back up to the surface. Fire department then walks south in the tunnel through rolling smoke to train 302, opens the door, the leading door on the north end of the train, and evacuates passengers to Linfon Plaza. Thankfully, this was a low body count situation. Only one person was completely incapacitated on 302 despite being in a train that was actively sucking in smoke from the outside and blowing it into everybody's faces and lungs. Everybody seems to have gotten down low, and they were all okay except for one person who did succumb to smoke inhalation. Didn't die on scene, but did die later of the effects of the smoke inhalation. Uh, so once 302 has been fully evacuated by the fire department, the fire department notices that there is nothing seemingly wrong with this train. There is no source of fire upon this train. So they walk past 302 and continue south. And what they find on the yellow line in the bottom left of the map there is a ventilation shaft and emergency exit that houses the connection between two separate track power circuits. The northern part of this circuit that train 510 and train 302 are on were operated by, or were provided power by, the L'Enfant Plaza substation. The south side of the vent shaft was powered by the Ohio Street substation. And in this diagram on the right, you can see our tracks. The right side of the image shows our two substations and how they feed power to the third rail. And then there are some copper-colored connections between two gaps that are labeled jumper cables, and that allows for a continuous flow of power through that third rail, even though there are physical gaps in the third rail. If you wanted to completely kill power to L'Enfant Plaza, you had to kill not only L'Enfant Plaza, but also the Ohio Street substation. But that doesn't explain why the fire actually started. Let's take a look at that next slide. What did start it was an improperly assembled jumper cable between the two different circuits.
Oh boy.
The photograph on the top right shows the actual location of the fire. You can see there's a boxy looking cover that has 4 cables coming out underneath of it. That is where the jumper cables are. These jumper cables are connected to each other via a physical plug that you could pull out and reinsert, just like the plug for your toaster into wall outlets. However, all of these connections, because there are 2 sets of 4, one on either side of this little gap underneath that cable cover that's also labeled as a step, they were missing a gasket that would prevent that plug and that little conductor of a lot of the spicy, juicy current from shorting out. In the diagram on the bottom left, you can see on both sides that there are solid black portions on there, and those represent the gaskets in this cutaway diagram that actually physically sealed the plugs. And what do you see in that photo of the emergency exit and the ventilation fan area and the cables? What do you see on the ground?
I see what now, I thought that might have been from the firefighting efforts, but I'm assuming, considering the proximity of this to the Potomac River, that it's water.
Oh, it's a lot of water. It is not just water. It is water and sludge made out of all of the nice metallic dust that comes from brake pads on these trains.
Oh,
Because
we love a
while
sludge.
Oh, it's a good sludge, because while those trains use dynamic braking, in which the motors on the axles are turned into generators to make resistive power to slow the train down, while that is used at higher speeds below roughly 5 miles an hour, these trains use brake pads on brake rotors. So just like your car, they're going to put off brake dust. There's nothing in this area that makes it a particularly bad place to accumulate this, but after decades of not being cleaned, there is a lot of this material built up.
What's
So
that?
this
A
is
beautiful
water.
1960s modernist metro system needs to be washed once in a while? Never. President Johnson didn't
Nobody's got
say that.
no, 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 no. The plan called for pretty stations and trains, not tunnels.
Mm,
Passengers aren't going to see the tunnels. It's okay. Little water stands in there. It's fine. We'll get to the leaks eventually.
eventually being next fiscal year. There is never a it's every fiscal year.
Always next fiscal year. Always next fiscal year.
Then 2008 happens and it's next 2 fiscal years.
We just keep kicking this can down the line. Leaks be damned. So, this sludge, along with other general detritus, including minerals from the relatively hard DC water, and just bits of trash and debris that have washed into the tunnel over the years, sucked in by the air of trains leaving a station and going into a tunnel, have accumulated. And this water has seeped into these orange plugs that we can see the diagram of on the left. And it finally, finally hit a level that was enough to allow the water to seep into multiple parallel plugs. And it allowed an arc. And
So
these plugs caught on fire.
so was the gasket dry rotted or was it gone entirely?
You know what? I'm going to have to cheat for just a second and check if. Oh, we are going to get there. We're going to
Okay.
get there. As a matter of fact, let's go to the next slide. I had to look ahead just a little bit. We're going to look at those plugs just a little bit more.
Ooh, I love a
So
green cup standing directly upright for scale.
the question is whether or not that was there before or after the incident.
Hey Steve, we don't have anything
So
for scale. Do you know how much a big do you know intrinsically how big a small gulp cup is? We can use that for reference.
how big is a 32-ounce Slurpee? There are 7-Elevens everywhere. Everybody knows what this is. So the photo on the right shows a nice healthy dose of the sludge that was in here. Um, the photo on the left, we can actually see 2 of the 4 cable connectors for this jumper assembly between third rails. Um, you can see there's a separate third rail and a separate cover board that has melted and is now making contact with the third rail. That cover board was there in case maintenance workers needed to step over the third rail. They could have something good to step on that wouldn't kill them. Uh, the we could see 2 of the intact cable connectors, the 2 big plugs. They're they were originally orange and now they're kind of a beige. They've been washed out by dirt and fire and smoke. Closer to the far right side, we can sort of see a cable connector. It looks a little more smoky and charred. And then there is an arrow that says location of consumed cable connector assembly. And it looks like it's pointing at a random spot of the wall, but those are the charred remains of the one cable connector that started it all.
Oh, yeah, that's oh god. You know, we had a small electrical fire at work the other day and that shit is terrifying sometimes. Oh my god.
And it smells so acrid too.
It's oh
Like it just
okay.
burns.
We had a computer power supply cable fail, and it's for a piece of high-end server equipment. So it's one of those big C19 plugs. I I cut the cable. I cut the cable and threw it away, but I kept the plug. That was 4 months ago. It still smells like ozone when you put your nose up against it.
I wish I had known about this incident before I went to DC and went to the station because I really would have liked to known if I stood on the south edge of that platform and gave a little whiff, would I still smell this? Because I am almost positive that power that smell was still there. There is too much power flowing through these to not linger.
I wonder if the smell
Well, maybe
actually.
10 years later,
I
9
wonder.
years later when I
I
went,
wonder
but
if
who knows?
I wonder if the smell had something would be stronger if the trains were going northbound instead of southbound through the tunnel. Because the piston
Oh,
effect
I
is probably shoving it towards Pentagon Station on the other side of the Potomac River, and it probably has time to dissipate in the tunnel. If
I'm
you're,
not sure. I'm sure I'll bet that at least a little bit of that
yeah,
smell came through, but wasn't enough to raise an alarm to people at Pentagon Station. I'm not sure.
that's an interesting thought. Yeah, just your bomb sniffing dog just starts getting really excited on the platform, and like just a little bit of smoke runs out, and like everyone has to be like, do we call someone? Is this us? Do
It's
we
some cop is probably standing there. It's like I smell smoke. The dog's going crazy. I don't smell weed. I don't smell cigarettes. What the fuck is
Yeah,
that?
it's like how exactly concerned do we need to be in post 9/11 America, and standing on Station platform, surrounded by defense contractor billboards?
Saddam Hussein was found in a tunnel, and we are in a series of tunnels. Do we need to be concerned? Is there a connection here? All right. So those power connections. Why does that one? Why is that one arrow that looks like it's pointing at a random spot on the wall look so different? Let's go to that next slide. So it is missing a very key part. We've got the same diagram up here again, but you can sort of see one of the things that the NTSB found. There is actually, look at the photo on the top right. Between the actual cable and the big plastic cover for it, you could see a fairly sizable gap.
Oh shit, it's just gone.
Um,
It's
well,
just
it can't be gone if it was never there.
oh no. Oh,
So
the
that is
subcontractor strikes again. The ch-
sort of, sort of, sort of.
oh no.
In our diagram on the left, the piece that is missing is the one that is labeled number 3, a sealing sleeve. Um, the these things were called pigtails, and I'm not sure if the construction of these was subcontracted or was done in-house by WMATA personnel, but what was determined was that the crew that built these, the NTSB report didn't make it clear who it was, um, weren't even told that there were supposed to be sealing sleeves on those.
Oh god.
So they weren't provided with any. They didn't know to ask that there was anything different. They built it per the instructions that they had found, and you could sort of see that towards the end of that cable before it goes in there, there is a thicker cover portion of the cable, just nominally thicker. They assumed that that was the sealing sleeve.
Oh no. Oh god. This is like Mega Bloks instructions when you're used to playing with Lego.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh god. Just like
They just went, oh, well, I guess that's, I mean, it's per specs. It's what they asked for. So they built them. They built thousands of these.
oh shit, they're
Literal
everywhere.
thousands. They were everywhere.
Oh
This has
no.
thankfully been remedied by now, but it was a major thing in the weeks following the Linfond Plaza fire. Every single one of these had to be replaced.
Oh
Not entirely
no.
replaced, but they had to be disassembled. And what was weird was that while every single one of these were documented as having a sealing sleeve on them, some crews did get them. Some crews didn't. So they had, but every single one was marked as being complete with a sealing sleeve. So they had to go through one by one, shut down multiple substations simultaneously, and figure out which ones actually had them and which ones didn't.
And you're gonna have
And
to
this
fix
was,
those in place. That must have been such a bitch to do. Oh my god.
yep. And you see what they were sitting in. It
Yeah.
was a dirty, smelly, foul job that took a little over a year to document every single one. working in limited hours overnight to not disrupt service.
Oh my god, just imagine hupping your ass across like the bridge over the Arlington River in like March to see if this one fucking thing that Ted said he did correctly. This this is why I don't make my own Cat 6 cables, because I know I would fuck it up. These guys did it to an entire subway system.
And you know what? To confirm your point exactly, when I hardwired my house, I basically asked my dad to please make the Cat 6 cables. I will run them. I can do that. That is easy stuff, but I don't trust myself to actually make something that will hook up to my devices correctly.
Meanwhile,
So big shout out to my dad for actually knowing how to do this shit.
a round of applause to him. I'm just thinking of my friend who when I was learning how to terminate Cat 6 cables just mentioned offhandedly that he did his parents' lake house with a pocket knife with Cat 6. Like he did it without even a stripper.
Oh no.
I
Oh buddy.
He did it too. That's the thing. Like
I
just
I almost don't want to admit this, but even as confident as I was that I was competent enough to run the wire, that how hard can that be? Um, roughly, let me see, roughly 5 feet above my head right now, and probably 6 or 7 feet to my left, somewhere in that attic, is a very nice DeWalt tape measure that I loved dearly that I lost in the insulation because I dropped it when I was trying to measure out where to drill the holes.
oh my god. And you can't
It's
just
it's fucking gone.
you can't
I've gone
just
up there with the magnet. I can't find that motherfucker for shit.
holy shit. You're going to have to go in through the bottom of the through the ceiling at some point.
Now there's an idea. I wonder if I have a strong enough magnet that it could find it. Don't give me ideas. Don't give me ideas. I can't afford that right now. But anyway, so while these while these pigtails were not made correctly, I don't think we can blame the people that actually made them, because if they don't know that they're not making them correctly, how do we expect to hold them to such high standards? But that whole situation, in regards to running a train into a tunnel with smoke coming out of it, running another train right up behind it, not answering when a train gets evacuated to know that there is now an empty train that's in the way. Who can we blame for that one? And
I have no idea.
my answer, who I stand by wholeheartedly, is on the next slide. It is motherfucking Denzel Washington. Okay, so it's not really Denzel Washington, but Denzel Washington is the one rail controller that we all know. We've seen him in The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
And we also saw him in Unstoppable as a train driver.
Yeah, but he wasn't a dispatcher there. Well, he gets a pass on that one. He gets a pass that one time. But the Rail Operations Control Center made a continuous series of mistakes. Number one, if a train reports smoke in the tunnel, don't put a train in that tunnel. That seems fairly sensible. Number two, if a you know what? We're getting a little slightly ahead of ourselves here. Go ahead and hit that next slide. I forgot. That was a one sentence gag. Here we go. What did we learn? Take reports of smoke seriously. Don't send a train into a tunnel that has smoke coming out of it. Don't ignore phone calls from known phone numbers like other employees of the Washington Metropolitan Transit Administration. If they're calling the Rail Control Center directly, they probably have something good to tell you. Don't allow further trains to go closer to the smoke when you've already got one train going into a dangerous situation. I still have no clue why they let 510 continue traveling south to Linfond Plaza.
I wonder if
You
there's
have
an,
to
I wonder if there's another train behind it. Like I don't know
I
that
mean, it's WMATA. There probably was.
they
There
could.
probably those fuckers have some of some of the best headways outside of New York City.
Yeah, and talking of what we learned with the Paris thing, if there's no siding to store a train in, they can't exactly back anything up to the last
Now that
station.
I did not find anything directly relating to this about. I did not look for track diagrams around the station. I probably should have. What I did notice when I rode the Washington Metro was it felt like between every third station, if I looked out the window, I would just see a random track split off and hide behind a wall. And it wasn't a crossover to connect to another main track because I saw those two at separate points.
Yeah, it's
They have spots to duck trains away.
I wonder if I wonder if every third station was not between L'Enfant Plaza and whatever the next station up the line was, which is another one of the major transfer stations with the red line, if I remember correctly.
Maybe.
I wonder if just that area, because you've got the two major transfer stations and then the Potomac Tunnel, there just wasn't anything right there.
Possibly, but there were still other opportunities up the
Oh
line
yes,
to
absolutely. There,
stash trains out of the way, especially for
yeah,
evacuations.
they just didn't.
Yeah. Um, Next up, provide workers with all tools that are necessary for the job. That doesn't seem to be the issue here, but it goes hand in hand with provide workers with all parts they need. How do you not provide them with all the parts they need to get the job done or the training to know that they are missing parts? I don't know if this was a generational thing. Maybe the first set of pigtails were installed when the system was brand new and they had an improved design that got retrofitted later. But these folks were not taught that there should have been a sealing sleeve on either end of that pigtail, and they accepted it as it was. Uh,
Yeah,
the inspection to sign it off afterwards should have seen that all of these pigtails were missing the sealing sleeves, and they didn't. So one person went through here and signed it all off. That was documented in the NTSB report. There should be at least two people looking at this to make sure everything is okay. One person can miss a minor detail easily. Two people probably won't miss the same minor detail. And the last thing that I think we learned was maintain a single point of contact wherever possible in emergency situations. Um, that rail operations controller who started taking the initial calls and started making the initial moves, they fucked up by running train 302 further south into the tunnel. But they were the ones that had directly heard all of the communications up to the point where they were tapped out and replaced with a different controller. Moving it to a different level of supervision, like up to a superintendent or a chief, would be one thing, but to be replaced with another employee of the same level and qualifications seems unnecessary. And
yeah.
I really don't know why they thought that was okay.
Guy, it something institutional bureaucracy. They probably were. If they're having bureaucracy over the trains being able to move like that, I bet you that like, nope, nope, you're level alpha beta sigma. We need somebody who's sigma sigma delta or whatever to sit down and do this. Like you have to
I
have an emergency qualification. Like you need to have qualifications in emergencies.
And in theory, everybody working in that office should be on the same level, but the bureaucracy runs so deep that I was still learning about different qualifications even for my own position up until the day that I left public transit. Um, and for a good illustration of the sheer level of bureaucracy, I once got suspended for 2 weeks because one night I went to change ends on my train and the panel of bypass switches was on my right. Well, on my right was also the largest area of open floor space, so I put my bag there. And when I went to change ends, I picked up my bag and I accidentally pulled open 4 bypass switches. I immediately realized what was going on or what had happened when I picked it up and I heard 4 clicks all in quick succession. I immediately reported this to the rail controller that uh, W, X, Y, and Z bypass switches had been opened inadvertently and had been restored. And it happened at this time. This is why. But even with that documentation, I still got suspended for a couple of weeks pending investigation just to go through the process of figuring out why those had been opened. And that was even with a camera that captured me accidentally doing it and then immediately calling the dispatcher about it. Bureaucracy is a son of a bitch.
It really is sometimes. It's a, it's a whole thing. But but yeah, so that was the Washington Metro disaster smoke incident, and I think it's interesting to note how even despite management as opposed to ground level employees doing everything wrong, only one person died, and even then it was incidentally, as opposed to in
It's
the
an improvement. It is a marked improvement.
yeah, as opposed to the Paris disaster where 77 people were killed by smoke from from a mostly similar set of incidences.
Yes, so we didn't have somebody trying to put out a fire while still running trains through the thing or with the thing that was on fire.
Yeah,
That was better.
yeah, that was
That was
better.
better.
The trains weren't made of wood. That was excellent. That was
And Train 502, when it was evacuated, everybody knew where to go because they were clearly marked exits.
and staff members who were showing them how to evacuate. There wasn't anybody in a
Yes.
WMATA uniform saying every man for himself.
Oh, Jesus Christ, no. Nope, 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 nope. Oh, I forgot about that detail. Oh, that one. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah, there wasn't like a clown
But
car of guys throwing glass water grenades on top of a smoking electric train as it rumbles as it rumbles underneath central Paris.
oh my God. But we did learn some good lessons as always.
Yeah,
We are only human. We still have lessons to learn, but I think for tonight,
yeah,
that's all I've got.
that's all I've got too. Let's see how long it's been going on for, because I haven't looked at
Oh, I just
OBS.
looked. I just looked.
Two
It's bad.
hours 49 minutes, 50 minutes. Oh
Oh,
my god!
we better hope we get some serious hogs from the WTYP crowd who
I
will just
hope
eat this
so.
up because no normal person will listen all the way
No,
through.
no one normal will listen to this. I'm gonna hit stop recording right now. So thank you all very much for listening. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you sticking around. If you haven't made it this far, fair, understandable, but you're not listening, so go fuck yourself. But
Well,
I,
you said you hit stop recording, but are you still going?
I'm still going. I haven't hit stop yet.
Okay. Uh, Before I go, I want to say that while we were doing this, I set up an email for the show. Please send us weird transit stories. It is the first letter of every word in the title of this show. It is SYDDOYWTW@gmail.com. I know that's a lot. It'll be in the show description. But we want to hear from you. Have you seen a transit disaster? Have you seen something that you could learn from? Or that you think transit as a whole could learn from? And I'm not talking about, well, that bus probably shouldn't be making a left turn there. We want to know about the good stuff. Pour the tea for us. We're here to sip it. We want to know. Give us the hot goss.
So yeah, with that, before we crest the 3 hour mark, I will hit stop now. I would like to say I apologize. There is a moment somewhere deep within the first hour and change of when I'm talking through the Paris Metro disaster when I stopped talking abruptly in the middle of a sentence. That was because somebody messaged me on Discord with the email address and password, and I was like, "What the fuck? Did I did my audio cut out or something?" It's like So no, that is why I
I was
stopped.
wondering if that's what the pause was for.
Yes, it was. It was me trying to use my computer and also talk at the same time and discovering that I
Oh
can't.
Jesus.
But
Oh Jesus.
but
We are professionals, if nothing else. I'll
we
tell you
are
that. We are
consummate
prepared for anything.
consummate professionals. What we are professionals at, I don't know. But we're going to close out this 2 hour and 52 minute and 30-second episode because I'm going to hit stop
Oh my God.
right now
Good
unless
night,
we have
everybody.
any other
Thank you for
notes.
listening.
Thank you for listening so much. Have a good one. Goodbye.